Chapter 1698. In the Qing-Hu mountain range. Just as the 30-centimeter-long green place sucked in a mouthful of the lake water that had been mixed with the pill powder, a 5-meter-long vegetarian crucian carp suddenly leaped out of the lake and directly swallowed the green place with its scarlet fish eyes. However, just as the vegetarian crucian carp swallowed the green flounder and was about to continue drinking the lake water mixed with the pill powder, a level 9 ancient alligator that was over 10 meters long opened its bloody mouth and swallowed the vegetarian crucian carp. In the next few minutes, more and more large and high-grade water-type exotic beasts rushed out of the lake and devoured the exotic beasts that had sucked in the lake water. When a 1,000-meter-long lobster that was at the beginning of the first stage of the Exalt realm rushed out of the lake, Yu Haoran gestured for Pallas to follow him to a height of 10,000 meters. He then started to use his soul power to drive the medicinal effects of the pill so that it could cover a wider area and attract more high-grade exotic beasts. Brother Qi, kill the Exalt realm exotic beasts with all your might. Yu Haoran turned his head to instruct the Scarlet Loathe when the 40-odd Saint realm and 9 Exalt realm exotic beasts could no longer resist the temptation of the medicinal efficacy that was driven by soul power and began to charge towards the azure lake. Got it. After nodding in response, Pallas waved the immortal culling sword in its scabbard and charged towards the dozens of Saint Realm and Exalt Realm exotic beasts. Pallas had an absolute advantage over the Saint Realm and Exalt Realm water-type exotic beasts in terms of grade, strength, artifacts, and martial techniques. In less than a minute, more than 50 Saint Realm and Exalt Realm exotic beasts were all killed by Pallas. However, under the crazy temptation of the soul power-driven pill's medicinal effects, beasts that were several thousand meters in size and had reached the pinnacle of the exalted realm gradually started to emerge from the lake's bottom. Furthermore, they glared with blood-red eyes as they charged toward the surface. Without needing Yu Haoran's order, Pallas, who was holding the immortal culling sword, charged forward. Whether it was the Qingfeng crocodile, which was at the peak of the 9th level of the venerable realm, or the man-eating whale, which was almost 10,000 meters in size, they were all easily killed by him. The blood that fell from the air, combined with the blood on the surface of the lake, gradually dyed the vast azure lake into a lake of blood. This caused Lan Rong and the others, who were standing on the western shore of the azure lake, to reveal shocked expressions. Prince Consort, you are truly a god. Lin Yuanxiang could not help but exclaim when he saw a gigantic exotic beast that was over a few thousand meters in size and still exuding a powerful aura rush to the shore of Green Lake due to the waves of the lake. General Lin immediately informed the military doctor to come and see if this powerful water-type exotic beast is suitable for consumption. Although Lan Rong was also amazed by Yu Haoran's terrifying strength, as the great general of the left army, he spent most of his time thinking about how to improve his army's combat power. An idea flashed through his mind when he sensed the abundant energy in the body of the gigantic exotic beast that was over a few thousand meters in size. He immediately instructed Lin Yuanxiang. There's no need to call the military doctor. This blue belly whale that has just reached the venerable realm is my gift to the army for consumption. Just as Lin Yuanxiang was about to turn around and call the military doctor to examine the exotic beast's corpse, Yu Haoran's reminder suddenly rang in everyone's ears. Thank you for your gift, Prince Consort. Without any hesitation, Lan Rong and the others immediately knelt down on one knee to express their gratitude. Then, they soared into the air and used their origin force and soul power to transport the blue belly whale's corpse out of the lake. They handed it over to the military kitchen to handle. As more and more exotic beasts died, the color of the azure lake became brighter and brighter. A terrifying aura gradually rose from the bottom of the lake. Under the influence of this terrifying aura, whether it was the dozen top-tier venerable exotic beasts that were charging into the air or the ordinary exotic beasts that were fighting each other on the surface of the lake, all of them quickly fled back to the bottom of the azure lake like frightened birds. The delightful slaughter completely unleashed Pallas's bloodthirsty nature. He quickly soared into the air and asked Yu Haoran for help. Brother Yu, it's just an 8-clawed octopus at the peak of the 3rd stage, Great Emperor realm. It's not worthy for you to personally deal with. Leave it to me. However, just as Pallas finished his request, an even more terrifying aura rose from the bottom of the azure lake. Brother you, it's just an early 5th stage, Great Emperor realm black turtle. It's not worthy for you to personally deal with it. Leave it to me. After sensing the second terrifying aura, Pallas became even more excited and requested. However, when the third terrifying aura that far surpassed that of the octopus and the black water turtle rose, the Scarlet Loath no longer arrogantly asked Euhauran to hold back. This was because the third terrifying aura didn't just mean that the exotic beast at the bottom of the lake had reached the peak of the 6th stage Great Emperor realm. It also vaguely gave him a fatal sense of danger. Tyrant Leech, peak of the 6th stage Great Emperor realm. It's the real emperor exotic beast of the Azure Lake. It's also the nemesis of the ancient divine beast Scarlet Pheasant. Euhauran knew very well why Pallas suddenly became silent. He took out the immortal trapping sword and reminded him with a smile. No wonder. When the Scarlet Loath heard that the owner of the third terrifying aura was actually the nemesis of its other bloodline inheritance, it finally understood that the other party's strength was not much stronger than its own. But why did it feel a sense of fatal danger? Brother Scarlet, do you plan to challenge the Tyrant Leech that can restrain half of your bloodline, or the 8-clawed octopus and black turtle with average strength? Euhauran smiled as he made his choice with one hand gripping the hilt of the immortal trapping sword. Tyrant Leech, Pallas, who was also gripping the hilt of the immortal slaughtering sword, replied with a strong fighting spirit in his eyes. Since he had already made a grand vow to surpass his ancestral bloodline, then defeating and killing the nemesis of his ancestral bloodline was the first step to surpassing his ancestral bloodline's influence. Seeing that Pallas didn't hesitate too much in his choice, Thaling, who was in the sea of consciousness, nodded with a look of admiration in his eyes. As a primordial treasure born in the chaos, a supreme existence that had formed its own consciousness since the beginning of the world, Thaling knew very well how difficult it was to surpass his ancestral bloodline. However, at the same time, he knew even more clearly how powerful a living being that could surpass his ancestral bloodline's influence would be. Therefore, when he saw that Pallas didn't hesitate to challenge the nemesis of his ancestral bloodline, Thaling was filled with anticipation. He hoped that Pallas could surpass the influence of his ancestral bloodlines, Scarlet Pheasant, and Scarlet Pheasant's bloodline in his body. Chapter 1699. In the Qinghu Mountain Range. Mount Tai Crush. Although the 8-clawed octopus was at the peak of the 3rd stage of the martial emperor realm, his mental state, physical body, spiritual energy, and soul power had all advanced to the peak of the 5th stage of the Emperor Wu realm. Therefore, the 8-clawed octopus could also exert the strength of the 3rd stage of the Emperor Wu realm. Therefore, even if the immortal trapping sword's sharp sword chi burst out, Euhauran was confident that he could defeat and kill the 8-clawed octopus with the help of the scabbard. Puff! The scabbard of the immortal trapping sword, which cooperated with the strength of the 3rd stage of the Emperor Wu realm, slashed the 8 tentacles of the 8-clawed octopus. With the sound of something soft being cut off, 5 tentacles were cut off by the scabbard of the immortal trapping sword. Total annihilation. After cutting off 5 of the tentacles that were whipping at him, Euhauran was struck by the 6th tentacle that followed closely behind. However, Emperor Wu realm's physical body, which was at the peak of the 5th stage of the martial emperor's body, coupled with the strong defense of the ancestor sorcerer's body, only made him feel a little pain. He didn't suffer any injuries. After drawing a sword flower with the scabbard of the hidden immortal sword, he continued to slash the 8-clawed octopus with the total annihilation of the basic sword technique. Puff! After cutting off the remaining 3 tentacles of the 8-clawed octopus, the scabbard of the immortal trapping sword, which contained divine power, slammed heavily on the huge body of the 8-clawed octopus. However, to Euhauran's surprise, the 8-clawed octopus's overly soft body offset nearly 80% of the power of the attack. The total annihilation of the sword technique only slightly injured the 8-clawed octopus. Looking at the wounds on the tentacles, 8 new tentacles quickly grew out at a speed visible to the naked body, and the 8-clawed octopus's abdomen began to shrink abruptly. Yuhara knew that it was about to use its most powerful technique, poison spray. At the same time, at the bottom of the lake, 1,000 meters away, a terrifying power was rapidly condensing. He knew that the Xianshui sea turtle at the peak of the 5th level of the Monarch realm was preparing a sneak attack. Yu Haoran did not continue to test his strength. He quickly pulled out the immortal trapping sword and used the soul-slaying move of the Heaven and Earth Massacre sword art to kill the octopus that was about to unleash its strongest move. Yu Haoran signaled Thaling to put away the octopus body and used the heaven-destroying sword style of the heaven-destroying sword art. With the help of the dual laws of flash, he slashed at the Xianshui turtle who was preparing to use his strongest sneak attack. Boom! Along with a muffled boom, a mushroom cloud about 100 meters high rose from the surface of the Green Lake. The power of Emperor Wu at the peak of the 3rd level combined with the sword chi of Emperor Wu at the peak of the 6th level and the immortal trapping sword and the Heaven and Earth Massacre sword had the power of Emperor Wu at the peak of the 7th level. Yu Haoran was very surprised that the Xianshui sea turtle, which was only at the peak of the 5th level in the Emperor Wu, was not killed by such a powerful sword chi attack. Yu Haoran, turtle-type exotic beasts are good at defense. At the same time, the Xianshui sea turtle contains a trace of the Xuanwu divine beast bloodline, which can increase its defense power to that of Emperor Wu at the peak of the 8th level. Thaling reminded Yu Haoran with a smile when he saw that Yu Haoran was surprised by his failure. The heaven-destroying sword art you just used is only at the peak of the 7th level in the Emperor Wu. Of course, it can't break through the Xianshui sea turtle's defense. The defense power of Emperor Wu at the peak of the 8th level was far more powerful than his strongest attack. At the same time, he had to kill all the Emperor Realm exotic beasts in Lake Qing to ensure that the 100,000 elite soldiers could safely cross Lake Qing. Yu Haoran, who had sheathed his sword, instructed Thaling. Thaling, it seems like you have to do it yourself. No problem. Thaling, who had already locked onto the Xianshui sea turtle with his divine sense, replied with a smile. Then, he used a divine sense attack to easily wipe out the Xianshui sea turtle's divine sense. Then, he put the Xianshui sea turtle's corpse into the victor. Yu Haoran, it seems like my judgment was wrong. Apart from the bloodline of the Xuanwu divine beast, this Xianshui sea turtle also contains a trace of the divine dragon's bloodline. It has the potential to become a divine turtle. Yu Haoran checked the blackwater sea turtle's corpse and suddenly discovered a new tower spirit. It said to Yu Haoran in surprise, Thaling, what do you want to do? Yu Haoran asked casually as he turned his head to look at the scarlet loathe, whose bloodline was suppressed by the tyrant leech and was temporarily at a disadvantage. He had no intention of stepping forward to help. Yu Haoran, I plan to use the Xianshui sea turtle's hardest shell to refine an Emperor Realm defensive magic weapon for Wuan. It can help her ascend to the Emperor Realm. Thaling, thank you. Yu Haoran could clearly feel the changes in Thaling after he had removed the barrier between them. Not only did he no longer hide any secrets from him, but he also started to think for him. This filled Yu Haoran's heart with boundless gratitude. There's no need to be so polite between us. After waving his hand, the tower spirit also looked at the scarlet loathed beast, who was at a disadvantage, but still did not draw out the immortal culling sword, and instructed with a solemn expression. Yu Haoran, as long as Pallas is not in mortal danger, you must not take the risk to help him. As long as he could defeat and kill the tyrant leech that suppressed his bloodline, then Pallas, whose soul had been strengthened, would have the potential to ascend to the divine beast level in a short period of time. If Pallas could successfully ascend to the god realm within a year, he would be able to unleash about 50% of the immortal slaughtering sword's power. Then, it would be enough to intimidate the god realm experts of the ancient demon clan and the ancient demon clan. It would be enough to buy time for Yu Haoran to increase his cultivation and strength. I understand. Yu Haoran nodded his head to indicate that he understood. He lowered his head to look at the lake water that had been dyed red by fresh blood. His eyes flashed with a hint of interest. This was because he suddenly thought of his experience and gains at the bottom of the mirror lake. Fouling, use your divine sense to continue observing the battle between Pallas and the tyrant leech. I'll go take a look at the cave abodes of the tyrant leech, the xianshui, sea turtle, and the octopus. All right, out of the 3 Emperor Realm mutated beasts, 2 had been killed by Yu Haoran, and 1 was fighting with Pallas. There was no one at the bottom of the Green Lake that could threaten him. Therefore, Fouling didn't think too much about Yu Haoran's suggestion and directly nodded his head in agreement. He immediately dived into the Green Lake and used his origin energy to accelerate his dive to the bottom of the lake. Not only was the Green Lake nearly 10,000 miles wide, but the bottom of the lake was also more than 10,000 meters deep. Chapter 1700. At the bottom of the Green Lake, Yu Haoran 1,700 meters ahead is the lair of the octopus. The powerful divine will of a third tribulation demigod could not only keep an eye on the battle between the palace and the tyrant leeches on the surface of the lake, but could also observe the situation at the bottom of the lake. Therefore, Fouling had located the exact location of the lair of the 3 Emperor-level beasts and informed Yu Haoran in time. After hearing Fouling's reminder, Yu Haoran quickly swam forward while checking with his divine will. This is the rank 2, rank 1 inkgrass. As soon as his divine will reached the front of the octopus lair, Yu Haoran found a spiritual herb that could be used to make the top bone dissolving soul-slicing pill. He continued to swim faster and reached the front of the octopus lair in 5 seconds. He then carefully put away the inkgrass. However, when he raised his head and looked into the depths of the lair, he could not help but frown. Not only was there a strong stench coming from the octopus lair, but the entire lair was also filled with eerie skeletons and rotten corpses. After taking out an antidote pill and consuming it, Yu Haoran endured the strong stench and stepped into the octopus lair. Although it was dirty and smelly, there were indeed many good things stored in the octopus's nest. Just the number of level 2 and above spiritual herbs and herbs that contained highly toxic level 2 had reached 9, and one of them was a level 2 9th grade poisonous herb. At the same time, he also obtained close to 3,000 rank 2 spiritual stones that were filled with water energy and a dozen rank 6 upper and rank 5 spiritual veins. The spiritual chi in these spiritual veins was enough to raise the strength of the 100,000 elite soldiers of the left army by 1 to 2 realms. After putting away the spiritual herbs, spiritual stones, and spiritual veins, Yu Haoran and Fouling used their divine will to check the entire lair from the inside out. After making sure that he didn't miss anything, he turned around and left the octopus's nest. Then, he went straight to the xianshui turtle's nest that was 20,000 meters away. Compared to the dirty and smelly lair of the octopus, the xianshui turtle's lair was spotless, giving people a pleasant feeling. What abundant spiritual chi of heaven and earth! After stepping into the nest of the xianshui turtle, Yu Haoran discovered that the concentration of water spiritual energy in the nest was at least dozens of times higher than that of an octopus. It was almost as good as some of the best natural paradises. The pagoda genie, who was also surprised by the abundance of water-type spiritual energy, immediately mobilized the powerful divine consciousness of a third tribulation demigod and began to scan the entire space of the lair. Even the deeper parts of the lair were not spared. But in the end, they found nothing. Fouling, look at what this is. Since Fouling took the initiative to search for the reason of the abundance of water element spiritual chi, Yu Haoran directly began to check the environment of the nest. With just one look, Yu Haoran was attracted by the pile of spirit herbs and spirit branches laid on top of it. This was because on the pile of spiritual herbs and branches, there was a black pearl that exuded a trace of Emperor's aura. The sea-suppressing pearl. Fouling quickly withdrew his divine will from checking the reason for the abundance of spiritual energy in the nest. When he saw the black pearl on the pile of spiritual herbs and branches, he immediately cried out in excitement. The supreme expert who controlled the 24 sea suppressing pearls in ancient times was not proficient in the art of refining. At the same time, he, who was kind, rarely fought with others. This caused the 24 sea suppressing pearls to give people the feeling that they were only at the pinnacle of the divine realm. However, when he killed the Void Realm artifact spirit some time ago, he used his own refining secret technique to refine the 6 ocean suppressing pearls. To his great shock, the pagoda spirit discovered that the core of every ocean suppressing pearl actually contained a mark born of chaos. The chaos mark born from the chaos was the foundation of a primordial treasure. In other words, each sea suppressing pearl was actually a primordial treasure level magic weapon. The combined 24 sea suppressing pearls could be compared to the golden saber. After all, among the 7 primordial treasures born from the chaos, the golden saber contained exactly 24 chaos marks. In the first tribulation at the beginning of the world, although the primordial treasures led by the Bell of Chaos had won, the defeated Hautian Seal did not suffer too many losses. The reason was that they had an advantage in the number of primordial treasures. If Howren could gather the 24 sea suppressing pearls and completely refine them with the refining method he had taught him, then they would have a chance to destroy the Hautian Seal in the infinite tribulations of primordial treasures. However, in addition to gathering the 24 sea suppressing pearls, he and Howren still had to find the 36 scattered chaos marks and then use the Rui Bell to help the Bell of Chaos be reborn. After all, the Hautian Seal was a primordial treasure with 35 chaos marks. Only the Bell of Chaos, which was superior in grade and strength, could defeat and destroy it. Thaling looked at Howren, who took the sea-suppressing pearl from the pile of spiritual herbs and spiritual branches and directly handed it to him. A hint of struggle flashed across his eyes. Although he had promised Wu Qi that he would never hide any secrets from Wu Qi, gathering and refining all 24 ocean-suppressing pearls that contained chaotic marks was related to the tribulation of innate supreme treasures in the immeasurable tribulation. Under the premise that Howren did not know about the infinite tribulations for the time being, if he revealed this secret in advance, it would not do him any good except add more troubles to his troubles. After thinking for a while, Thaling decided to wait until the infinite tribulations of primordial treasures to reveal the secrets between the 24 sea suppressing pearls and the infinite tribulations of primordial treasures in detail. After handing the sea suppressing pearl to Thaling, Howren wanted to continue to check the environment of the nest. However, in the corner of his eyes, he inadvertently saw a spiritual herb emitting a cold aura among the pile of spiritual herbs and branches. This is the star anise mysterious ice grass, which has reached the 3rd grade of the 2nd level. Howren immediately reached out and picked up the spiritual herb emitting a cold aura. After carefully observing it, he whispered to himself with joy in his heart. The star anise mysterious ice grass could not only eliminate the demonic barrier formed in the cultivation process by directly swallowing it, but could also be used to refine the 2nd grade of the spirit congealing pill. It was a very precious and rare spiritual herb. After happily putting away the star anise mysterious ice grass, Howren continued to bend down and carefully examine the pile of grass. Then he found a broken Bodhi branch that could be used directly to improve his comprehension. Chapter 17:01. At the bottom of Green Lake. After looking away from the haystacks of spiritual herbs and spiritual branches, Howren continued to check the whole nest. Soon, his eyes were attracted by an inconspicuous light purple flower in the corner of the nest. This is, in a flash, Howren appeared in front of the light purple flower. He bent down and observed it carefully. A sense of familiarity suddenly surged in his heart, as if he had seen it somewhere in his previous life, but he couldn't remember it at the moment. Howren, although I don't know the specific origin of this light purple flower, the aura it emits is making my blood boil and my divine soul in my sea of consciousness tremble violently. I can't suppress the urge to get it. The empty spirit mouse, who had been cultivating in his sleeve, was unexpectedly awakened by a very strong aura of treasure. It flashed and appeared on Yu Haoran's shoulder. After taking a careful look at the light purple flower, it solemnly reminded him. So, I'm 100% sure that this light purple flower must be a top treasure. Originally, Yu Haoran had only intended to treat the light purple flower as an ordinary treasure. However, after hearing the Void Spirit Mouse's solemn reminder, Yu Haoran immediately stopped looking down on it. He then closed his eyes and began to carefully recall the various experiences of his past life, searching for the source of this familiar feeling. It's it. When he recalled that in his previous life, he had entered a huge tomb in the core of the demon god's ancient tomb and accidentally saw a light purple spiritual flower that was condensing fruits, a look of surprise appeared in his eyes. As a tomb that could bury gods and demons, the concentration and purity of the spiritual chi of heaven and earth in the demon god's ancient tomb was hundreds of times that of the outside world. However, the concentration of the spiritual chi in the tomb, where the light purple flower was located, was dozens of times that of the demon god's ancient tomb. Moreover, when the light purple flower condensed fruits, it attracted the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, which increased the concentration of the spiritual chi of heaven and earth in the entire tomb by nearly 100 times. Unfortunately, just when he wanted to get close to the light purple flower and pick the fruit condensed on the stamen, the demon god's ancient tomb began to self-destruct, causing him to lose the opportunity to get the fruit. The drastic change in Yu Haoran's mood immediately alarmed the Thaling, who was still investigating the source of the abundant spiritual energy in the nest. He was a powerful existence who had once reached the peak of the Supreme Being realm. Although he had lost his cultivation due to his injuries, his instincts as a Supreme Being still remained. The abnormality of the spiritual chi in the black water turtle's lair made him instinctively feel that something was wrong, so he kept investigating. Following Yu Haoran's gaze, he quickly saw the light purple flower in the corner. This is a Fu Ling flower that can absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and fuse it with the concept of reincarnation. It can undergo 6 evolutions of root, grass, flower, fruit, tree, and soul before finally forming the foundation of the 6 Tao. When he saw the light purple flower with 6 petals and its aura completely restrained, Thaling was both shocked and overjoyed. At the same time, he finally knew why the spiritual chi of heaven and earth in the black water turtle's lair was so abundant. Thaling, what is the concept of samsara? What is the foundation of a 6 Tao? Thaling's shocked exclamation about the light purple flower immediately attracted Yu Haoran's attention. But after hearing the content of his exclamation, doubt replaced joy in an instant. Yu Haoran, how do you know about this Fu Ling flower? Thaling did not answer Yu Haoran's question and asked instead. In my previous life, I once saw the whole process of the Fu Ling flower condensing fruit in the tomb of a powerhouse of unknown realm in the core of the demon god's ancient tomb. I also know that it has the powerful ability to draw in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Yu Haoran replied truthfully. He just witnessed the 4th evolution of the Fu Ling flower with his own eyes. After hearing Yu Haoran's reply, a trace of regret flashed in Thaling's eyes. He regretted not being able to control his emotions just now and inadvertently exposing the secret that even countless Supreme Being powerhouses in ancient and medieval times did not know. However, it was too late to regret now. After all, he had once promised Yu Haoran that he would never hide any secrets. Yu Haoran, do you still remember the 18 levels of hell that you once went through in Yanluo City? The pagoda genie took a deep breath and sorted out its thoughts before asking. Of course I remember. Yu Haoran nodded. The 18-level Black Iron Tower in Yama City. The first level of the Iron Tower was the Hell of Tongue Pulling. The second level was the Hell of Scissors. The third level was the Hell of Iron Tree. And the 4th level was the Hell of Sin. It made him feel like he had fallen into the legendary 18 levels of hell. This kind of eerie feeling was very realistic and terrifying, so he could remember it directly without even needing to recall it. Since the beginning of the world, there have been legends of the six Tao of samsara and hell. But until now, no one has been able to see hell with their own eyes and experience the six Tao of samsara. Do you know why? Thowling still did not answer and continued to ask. I don't know. Yu Howren shook his head and gestured. After a person died, their soul could enter hell, and then the judge of hell would decide your fate of reincarnation according to your good and evil deeds in life. If you were a good person who took pleasure in helping others in life, then you could enter the human path of the six Tao of samsara and continue to be a human after reincarnation. If you were a great evil person who did all kinds of evil in life, then you would first experience the torture of the 18 levels of hell. After eliminating all the sins of your previous life, you could enter the animal path of the six Tao of samsara and reincarnate into six animals like pigs and dogs. This was the story that the elders of the family used to educate and scare children since he was sensible. He also once insisted on doing good deeds for 3 months after listening to this story and accumulated good karma. However, since he successfully opened up his dantian and officially stepped into cultivation, he found that the legends about the six Tao of samsara and hell were really just legends. This was because he had never seen good people receive good rewards and evil people receive evil retribution. In particular, after reaching the martial saint realm and comprehending the laws of life and death, he could clearly sense the souls of living beings directly dissipating into pure energy after death and returning to the world. As a result, he became even less convinced of the existence of the six Tao of samsara and hell. That's because the six Tao of samsara and hell have never been truly refined. Thowling looked in the direction of the western region through the layers of barriers in his sea of consciousness as he spoke with endless regret in his eyes. Thowling, what did you just say? The information Thowling had just revealed was far too shocking, which made Yu Howren believe that he had misheard. This was because in his imagination, even if the six Tao of samsara and hell were real, they should have been condensed from the world and controlled and operated by the laws of the heavenly way. Chapter 1702. At the bottom of Green Lake, in a Xianshui turtle's nest. That's because the six paths of reincarnation and hell, which can allow living beings to reincarnate and be reborn, have never been truly refined. Thowling also knew how shocking the information he had just revealed was. So in the face of Yu Howren's incredulous questioning, he repeated it again. Thowling, hell governs the sins of living beings, and the six paths of reincarnation determines the future of living beings. Can such heaven-defying existences really be refined artificially? Thowling's more detailed retelling did not allow Yu Howren to accept this shocking information, so he still asked in disbelief. Yes, but it's very difficult. As he nodded to confirm, Thowling began to explain the entire process of refining the six paths of reincarnation and hell in detail. To successfully refine the six paths of reincarnation and hell, there were 3 basic prerequisites. The first basic precondition was that living beings who could successfully refine the Dharma of entrapment and the Dharma of reincarnation could willingly become reincarnated in hell, and use the Dharma of entrapment to identify the sins of living beings in their lifetime, and use the Dharma of reincarnation to determine the future of living beings. In fact, the first basic precondition had basically blocked the hope of refining the six paths of reincarnation and hell. Whether it was the Dharma of entrapment or the Dharma of reincarnation, they were all heaven-defying Dharma powers that were not inferior to the Dharma of space. Even for living beings with the best talent and comprehension in the world, it was already very difficult to comprehend and refine one of the Dharma of 2 paths of reincarnation. It was basically wishful thinking to comprehend and refine 2 Dharma of 2 paths of reincarnation at the same time. Even if there were such heaven-defying living beings who were lucky enough to comprehend and refine the Dharma of 2 paths of reincarnation, the power of the Dharma of 2 paths of reincarnation was probably not inferior to the peak of the supreme realm. Then, They would willingly abandon their physical body and divine soul, as well as the Taoist foundation that they had cultivated for countless years, and become the six paths of reincarnation and hell with no freedom. The second basic congenital condition was to use 108 kinds of innate spiritual treasures to create the 18 levels of hell to punish the sins of living beings. At the same time, the void mirror needed to be combined with the power of law of entrapment and fruit to evolve into a mirror of karma that could reflect all the experiences of living beings in their previous lives. Although the second prerequisite sounded simple, the difficulty level was about the same as the first one. Be it connate cardinal treasures or connate spirit treasures, they had all successfully nurtured weapon spirits with their own intelligence at the beginning of the world. Regardless of whether it was the connate numinous treasure used to create the 18 levels of hell or the void mirror used to create the karma mirror, they only needed their true bodies. As for the artifact spirit, it would either wait for the six paths of reincarnation and hell to be completely refined before being reincarnated, or it would become a wandering soul and perish on its own. When faced with such an outcome of certain death, probably not many connate numinous treasures would be willing to make such a sacrifice. The first calamity at the beginning of the world was caused by the Bell of Chaos wanting to refine the six paths of reincarnation and hell. The third prerequisite was to successfully advance the roots, grass, flower, fruit, tree, and soul 6 times. Finally, the Poria flower would possess the foundation of the six paths of reincarnation and hell to bestow the true energy source of the six paths of reincarnation and hell. The Poria flower was a unique existence in the world. Only one flower would appear in each period. At the same time, the Poria flower was a top spiritual flower without any offensive or defensive power. It was very easy for living beings to spy on it. Therefore, the Poria flower that appeared in the primordial, middle, and late antiquity periods did not even make it through the 4th advancement process, let alone mature after 6 advancements. It was directly devoured by living beings that accidentally found it. It was precisely because of these 3 basic prerequisites that the 6 paths of reincarnation and hell had not been successfully refined even after the primordial, middle, and late antiquity periods. After hearing Thaling's description of the refinement of the 6 paths of reincarnation and hell, the first clone that was cultivating in the victor lowered his head and looked at his hands. There was a trace of confusion in his eyes. This was because just after Yu Haoran entered the Xianshui turtle's nest, an inexplicable aura had caused him to suddenly enter a state of enlightenment. In just a short minute, he had successfully comprehended the law of wheels. Through the barrier between the victor and the sea of consciousness, the first clone looked at the Poria flower that was not very beautiful. The confusion in his eyes was gradually replaced by decisiveness. Then, he used the law of wheels that he had just comprehended. Without Yu Haoran and Thaling noticing, he directly absorbed the Poria flower into his dantian. Just as the Poria flower floated above his dantian, countless pure and rich spiritual chi of heaven and earth appeared out of thin air in the victor's room where the first clone was. Even the victor's weapon spirit, Thaling, could not detect the changes in his body. Where's the Poria flower? The 3 basic prerequisites that Thaling had just described made Yu Haoran 100% certain that no one in this world could successfully refine the 6 paths of reincarnation and hell. Therefore, as the Poria flower could greatly increase one's cultivation and strength, there was no need to continue waiting for its next 3 advancements. Therefore, when Yu Haoran reached out to pluck the Poria flower in front of him suddenly disappeared. Thaling, who had also seen the Poria flower disappear, immediately mobilized Victor's origin energy to increase the power of his divine sense. In an instant, it covered an area of 10,000 miles to trace the cause of the Poria flower's disappearance. A cooked duck had actually flown away right under his nose. Yu Haoran, who had never encountered such a situation, was instantly enraged. He secretly decided that no matter who had secretly stolen the Poria flower, even if it was a deity who had advanced to the martial god realm, he would make the other party pay an unbearable price. Unfortunately, in the face of Thaling's inability to trace and lock onto the culprit who had stolen the Poria flower, Yu Howren, who could not vent his anger, decided to vent his anger on the nest that no longer had any treasures. Boom! Accompanied by a loud boom, the nest that could withstand the attacks of a peak martial venerable was finally reduced to a pile of broken walls under Yu Howren's heavy punches. Yu Howren, who had vented part of his anger, took a deep breath and turned to head straight for the tyrant leech's nest. At this moment, the palace on the surface of the Green Lake had gradually gained the upper hand after withstanding the pressure of the bloodline restraint. Chapter 17:03. At the bottom of Green Lake, Yu Howren couldn't help but sigh as he looked at the entrance to the lair that was made with hundreds of colorful rocks. Thaling, although the tyrant leech doesn't look that good from the layout of the lair, it seems like it's a guy that knows how to enjoy and appreciate beauty. Facing Yu Howren's heartfelt exclamation, Thaling held back his laughter and agreed, "Maybe. Let's go." When Yu Howren thought of the Poria flower that he had mysteriously lost, his gloomy expression replaced his smile. His eyes were filled with boundless anticipation as he hinted, "Let's see if there are any top-notch treasures in the lair of the tyrant leech, the overlord of Green Lake, that can heal my broken heart." After that, they stepped into the tyrant leech's lair through the colorful entrance. However, in less than a second, Yu Howren rushed out with a pale face and complained angrily, "Thaling, didn't you use your divine telekinesis to check before?" "Yu Howren, I've been trying my best to find the culprit who stole the China root flower. I didn't have the time to check the tyrant leech's lair," Thaling explained hypocritically as he continued to hold back his laughter. Oomph. Thaling's reasonable explanation made Yu Howren, who had nowhere to vent his frustration, let out a cold snort to express his dissatisfaction. Then he took out a spirit-slaughtering pill from his storage ring with a murderous aura. Without any hesitation, he wrapped the spirit-slaughtering pill with his origin energy and sent it into the tyrant leech's lair. Then he used his origin energy to ignite the power of the spirit-slaughtering pill. In less than 3 seconds, countless ear-piercing screams came from the lair. Yu Howren had no choice but to seal his hearing. On the surface of Green Lake, the tyrant leech, which had the upper hand, was gradually being evened out by its opponent. Now, it was at a disadvantage. This made the tyrant leech increasingly irritable. When countless ear-piercing screams came from the bottom of the lake, the tyrant leech knew that something had happened to its lair and went into a frenzy. After that, it started to overdraw its demonic power and soul power without caring about the consequences. This allowed the tyrant leech's strength to quickly break through the beginner rank 7 Emperor Wu. From succumbing to the opponent's bloodline restraint, to gradually suppressing it, and finally overcoming the fear in its heart, Palace's mental state was completely improved. At this moment, if he continued to fight the tyrant leech with his own strength, there would be no improvement of his mental state and soul power and soul power. Then, he killed the tyrant leech and used all his strength, and used the power of his soul power and soul power. Then, he used all of his soul power and soul power. S's use his as leeches. Of the heavenly of soul of God, est kill, to the heaven. To the soul after that, Palace dived into the lake and headed straight for the tyrant leech's lair after receiving the message from Thaling's divine will. After 3 minutes, as the ear-piercing screams in the lair gradually subsided, Yu Howren removed his hearing and also sealed his sense of smell. Then, he stepped into the lair again. The scarlet loath also followed closely behind and rushed into the nest. Blurg! The scarlet loath, who had just stopped sprinting, instantly felt nauseous when he saw the countless ugly leech corpses that emitted an incomparably foul stench in the spacious lair. He could not help but vomit on the spot. After seeing Palace vomiting on the spot, Yu Howren felt much better and quickly reminded him with a smile. "Brother Chi, seal your sense of smell immediately." In fact, there was no need for Yu Howren to remind him. Palace, who had barely stopped his nausea, had already started to seal his sense of smell. turning his head to look at the countless leech corpses in front of him, which completely covered the entire environment of the lair. There was no way to use the naked eye to observe and find the whereabouts of the treasure. Howard could only use his divine will to forcefully penetrate the obstacles of the corpses and started to inspect them bit by bit. After penetrating thousands of leech corpses, Howard's divine will could barely detect a trace of the treasure's aura. He immediately used his origin energy and soul power to move away the dozens of leech corpses that were covering the treasure's aura. A piece of purple metal that was inserted into the ground came into view. Howard, this is the purple gold godly metal that can be used to forge middle-grade godly artifacts. Although Thaling didn't have a serious obsession with cleanliness, the degree of decomposition of the leech corpses that had been poisoned by the spirit-slaughtering pill was simply too disgusting. As such, he didn't actively use his divine will to inspect it like before. Therefore, when Howard moved dozens of rotting leech's corpses and saw the purple metal piece buried in the ground, he immediately reminded them in surprise. Thaling, keep it. Hearing that it was a material that could be used to forge godly artifacts, Howard didn't bother to go closer to inspect it. He directly signaled to Thaling. After that, he continued to use his divine will to continue his inspection bit by bit. This time, his divine will penetrated close to 30,000 leech corpses before he could once again sense the dense spiritual energy. After using his origin energy and soul power to move the dozens of rotten leech corpses, Howard's face immediately revealed an incomparably happy smile. Howard, what treasure is this? Thaling couldn't help but ask when he saw that there were 7 stalks of dark red grass that he didn't know of under the leech corpses that had been moved away. The red spirit returning grass is formed from the blood essence of the tyrant leech colony. It can be directly consumed to raise the physical body's grade. At the same time, it can be used to refine the body-tempering pill that can help the physical body break through to the next realm. As he replied to Thaling's question, Howard walked in front of the 7 stalks of dark red grass. 1 stalk of level 2 rank 9, 2 stalks of level 2 rank 8, and 4 stalks of level 2 rank 7. These 7 stalks of red spirit returning grass can be used to refine pills that can help Ling Fei, Wu Hin, my sister, and Zhengjuan's physical body to reach the peak of level 7 of Emperor Wu's. After taking out 3 specially made jade boxes from his storage ring and carefully storing them according to their grades, Howard planned to use his divine will to continue his inspection. However, he was stopped by Thaling, who couldn't stand his slow inspection speed. After that, Thaling directly used his 3rd Tribulation Demigod's divine will to scan the entire lair. After confirming the exact location of the treasure's aura, he activated his weapon refining fire and directly burned the leech corpses on top of the treasure. After the dozens of leech corpses closest to the treasure were burned to ashes, a bead that was the size of a nucleus and had a sky blue color. It emitted a dense water-type aura as it lay there quietly. Whether it was in his previous life or in this life, Howard, who had seen this bead several times, immediately recognized that it was the water elemental bead that had the effect of repelling water. Chapter 1704. At the bottom of the Qing Lake, in the nest of the tyrant leeches. On the second piece of empty land that Thaling had cleared out with the refining fire, there was a strange spiritual tree that was about 70 centimeters tall. Its entire body was greenish-brown, and its shape was slightly ferocious and terrifying. When he saw the 9 palm-sized flowers that looked like newborn babies blooming on the branches of the strange spiritual tree, Howard's eyes showed a trace of reminiscence. Then, the reminiscence was replaced by a look of self-blame. This was because the blooming flowers of the strange, spiritual tree in front of him made him think of the 2 women that he had once promised. The 2 women were not human, and he wanted to use a baby-like flower as the main ingredient to refine a pill that could repair their damaged foundation and achieve a complete transformation of their physique. However, due to the limitations of his own cultivation and pill Tao at that time, as well as the various changes in the refining process, he was unable to fulfill his promise to refine the pill when they parted ways in the end. Later on, when his cultivation and pill Tao were enough to easily refine the pill, he had already forgotten about the promise he had made back then because of various busy matters. Now, when he saw the baby-like spiritual flower of a higher grade, he suddenly remembered the promise he had made back then. He remembered that the woman who was as gentle as water in the life and death situation she faced. The guilt in his heart immediately made him sink into deep self-blame. You, Howren, according to your promise with the two snake beauties back then, when they found you again, you were using the baby's soul flower to refine the rank 5, rank 9 essence condensing pill for Ruyun. When he saw you, Howren, looking at the spiritual tree with a look of deep self-blame in his eyes, Thaling, who understood the process of refining the pill back then, reminded him with a trace of dissatisfaction. Therefore, it was them who broke the promise first. You don't need to feel guilty or blame yourself, and you don't need to feel any annoyance because of this. Thaling, I'm not guilty because I didn't fulfill the promise back then, but because I blame myself for being too cold. Walking to the front of the infant soul demon tree, Howren looked at the infant soul flower that had reached rank 2, rank 7. Howren's eyes revealed a trace of worry as he explained. Whether it's destroying Ryun's profound foundation through insidious means or planting the red blood goo that can control the soul in her body, it's enough to show how tough the enemy she's facing is and how profound his background is. In the past, I was limited by my own cultivation and strength, so I couldn't help her get through the dangerous situation. Temporarily forgetting is pardonable. Now, I have the strength to shake an entire race, but I have never thought of the people who helped me in my previous life. This is obviously a little unreasonable. Seeing Howren unable to walk out from the guilt and self-blame, Thaling revealed a trace of worry in his eyes, but he did not continue to persuade him. This was because Thaling knew very well in his heart that Howren, after reincarnating, was influenced by his own comprehension of the dual laws of life and death. Subconsciously, he attached great importance to the kindness he owed in his previous life. If he wanted to let him walk out from the guilt and self-blame in his heart, and to dissolve the heart demon that might form, he could only try his best to make up for the kindness he owed Ruyun. According to the contents of the conversation between Ruyun and Ruyun when they left Qingyun Peak, Thaling could basically guess where the two sisters went. Thinking of the nest of the Snake Beauty tribe, which was only a few 100,000 kilometers away from the Qinghu mountain range, he immediately reminded him with a smile. Howren, after you've dealt with the military affairs of the eastern region, I'll take you to the waters where the Snake Beauty tribe is. Then, I'll personally visit them to fulfill the promise back then. All right, Howren, who also knew how to dissolve the guilt and self-blame in his heart, nodded in agreement to Thaling's suggestion. He carefully transplanted the infant soul demon tree directly into the victor. While continuing to maintain the vitality of the infant soul demon tree, he also planned to use a special method to allow the infant soul flower to condense a higher-grade infant soul fruit, so that it could be refined into a low-grade rank 1 pill that could assist in breaking through to the martial god realm. The other 3 places that Thaling had cleared out also had precious spiritual herbs that were rank 2 and above. After carefully putting away these spiritual herbs that could be used to refine high-grade pills, Howren called out to Palace, then turned around to leave the nest of the tyrant leeches. Just as he was about to return to the army on the left, Thaling spoke out to stop him. Howren, wait a moment. After that, Thaling used the divine thought of a third tribulation demigod and directly moved the entire nest of the tyrant leeches away, exposing a mid-grade rank 4 spiritual vein underneath the nest. Howren, didn't you plan to create a blessed place for the army on the left in the eastern region that was suitable for cultivation and could also defend against the siege of the Great Han army? Thaling explained with a smile as he used his divine thought to seal the mid-grade, rank 4 spiritual vein that had its consciousness erased by the tyrant leeches. With the mid-grade rank 4 spiritual vein as the energy source of the formation, And then with the solar lunar star formation that my second clone has mastered, I can completely create a blessed place that even Emperor Wu, a peak level 9 expert, can't break through in a short period of time. Thowling, thank you for your hard work. Yu Haoran was pleasantly surprised by Thowling's explanation. At the same time, he hurriedly thanked him. The reason why the Great Han Empire, which was conquering the eastern region, opened up a place that could accommodate the civil and military officials of the Great Emperor Qin Kingdom was only to prevent the ancient demon race and the ancient god and demon race from emerging as a life-saving measure. He couldn't waste too much time on this matter. Therefore, he had to create an absolutely safe rear base and let Lan Rong and a few other generals, who were proficient in military strategy, lead 100,000 elite soldiers to continue conquering and expanding the territory of the Great Emperor Qin Kingdom. This was the plan that he had taken the initiative to lead the army into battle this time. The Pagoda Spirit's solar moon star sealed defensive formation, which had been set up by the Pagoda Spirit's medium-level 4 spirit vein, had solved his worries. He could increase his cultivation base and strength rapidly through adventures. After Thowling forcefully put away the mid-grade rank 4 spiritual vein, Yu Haoran brought Palace back to the temporary military camp that was set up on the western shore of Green Lake. He was pleasantly surprised when he saw more than 90,000 elite soldiers breaking through at the same time while sitting cross-legged. Thousands of generals and martial emperor experts were on guard. He also revealed a satisfied expression in his eyes, considering that the consumption of the spiritual qi of heaven and earth when so many elite soldiers broke through at the same time, the concentration of spiritual qi on the western shore of Green Lake might not be able to satisfy all the spiritual qi required for the breakthrough. Chapter 17:05. On the western shore of Green Lake. With the help of the pure and rich spiritual energy from the 3 upper-level 6 spirit veins, the 90,000 elite soldiers had successfully broken through in just half an hour. Yu Haoran nodded with satisfaction as he scanned the 90,000 elite soldiers who were using the remaining spiritual energy to consolidate their breakthrough. With the help of the flesh and blood essence of the blue whale, which had reached the pinnacle of the venerable realm, the 90,000 elite soldiers who had outstanding talent and potential had directly broken through a major realm. Those who had average talent and potential had at least broken through 2 minor realms. Before they crossed the Green Lake mountain range and stepped into the territory of the Great Han Empire in the eastern region, the improvement of the overall strength of the 100,000 elite soldiers of the left army would be of unimaginable help to the upcoming battle. At the same time, according to the agreement between him and Emperor Qin, the 100,000 elite soldiers of the left army would belong to the private army of the prince's mansion. In other words, they would belong to him. Yu Haoran was quite satisfied with the increasing strength and outstanding performance of these elite soldiers. He didn't want to see them suffer any unnecessary losses. Considering that the spiritual energy of heaven and earth on the eastern shore of Green Lake was far greater than the western shore of Green Lake, the level and strength of the exotic beasts that lived on the eastern shore of Green Lake would definitely be far greater than the western shore of Green Lake. Therefore, he planned to take advantage of the time when the 90,000 elite soldiers were consolidating their realms to clear the hidden dangers on the eastern shore of Green Lake in advance and give the left army a safe place to land. Yu Haoran waved his hand at Lan Rong and Han Guangbei. After telling them his thoughts and plans, Yu Haoran took the red loath and soared into the sky, heading straight for the eastern shore of Green Lake. The facts also prove that his plan was correct, because just as he and Palace landed on the eastern shore of Green Lake, 5 exotic beasts of the 1st to 3rd level of the Monarch realm and 17 exotic beasts of the Venerable realm suddenly joined forces to launch a sneak attack. If the 100,000 elite soldiers were suddenly ambushed by more than 20 exotic beasts of the Monarch realm and the Venerable realm, at least a quarter of them would be lost. Fortunately, Yu Haoran had anticipated this beforehand. At the same time, the Pagoda Spirit's warning allowed him and the Scarlet Loath, who were already prepared, to use the Immortal Trapping Sword and the Immortal Slaughtering Sword to kill all the Monarch and Venerable realm beasts. Brother Yu, I'll have to trouble you to protect me. I need to use all my strength to suppress my breakthrough. After using the immortal slaughtering sword to easily kill the last third-rank Monarch Realm beast, the demonic energy in his body suddenly began to boil uncontrollably. This caused the Scarlet Loath's expression to change as it hurriedly warned Yuhauran. Brother Chi, don't worry. I'll take care of everything. Yuhauran, who was well aware of Pallas's ambitions, knew the reason why he was suppressing his breakthrough. Therefore, he reminded Pallas as he used his consciousness to be alert of their surroundings. Thank you. After expressing his gratitude, Pallas sat down cross-legged and placed the immortal slaughtering sword on his knees. Then, he used his state of mind and the murderous aura of the immortal slaughtering sword to suppress the boiling demonic energy in his body. Yuhauran couldn't help but frown as he watched Pallas try his best to suppress his breakthrough. Fouling, will Pallas's suppression of his realm affect his foundation? Although he had also been suppressing his breakthrough, his situation was completely different from Pallas. Pallas's accumulation of potential had already exceeded the limits of what his foundation could bear. He could only rely on his own strength to suppress it. On the other hand, he had always focused on strengthening his foundation. The increase of his potential was far from the limits of what his foundation could bear. Therefore, he could easily suppress Emperor Wu's breakthrough while constantly increasing his potential and strength. Yes, Fouling, who had already used his consciousness to check on Pallas, nodded and replied. Then why didn't you stop him just now? He clearly knew that forcefully suppressing his breakthrough would cause damage to his foundation and potential. He clearly knew that Pallas, who respected him from the bottom of his heart, would definitely listen to his advice. However, he simply ignored it. Yuhauran was very displeased that Fouling ignored Pallas's forceful suppression of his breakthrough. Yuhauran, the reason why I didn't appear to stop him was because the suppression of his realm this time would not affect him at all. Moreover, the increase of his potential through the suppression of his breakthrough would allow him to reach Emperor Wu's peak 9-stage limit in his next breakthrough. Fouling wasn't angry at all when faced with Yuhauran's questioning and explained with a smile. The reason is that defeating the tyrant leech that restrains his bloodline allowed his mind to reach its limit and also endlessly strengthen his foundation. Fouling, I'm sorry. I was too impulsive just now. While he finally understood why Pallas continued to take the risk of suppressing his breakthrough, he also understood why Fouling chose to watch from the sidelines. However, Yuhauran immediately felt ashamed and hurriedly apologized when he thought of his unprovoked questioning. It's all right. Fouling smiled and replied, looking at the Scarlet Loath whose aura was gradually stabilizing. Yuhauran knew that it had successfully suppressed the breakthrough of the realm by relying on its sublimated state of mind. Feeling a little touched in his heart, he suddenly wanted to know if the thickness of his foundation could support his state of mind cultivation, the grade of his physical body, the realm of his origin power, and the realm of his soul power before his cultivation broke through to Martial Emperor. After all, the black and white wings had a strong effect on increasing one's realm and could support his cultivation for a very, very long time. After carefully observing Yuhauran's situation with his divine sense, Fouling thought for a moment before replying. Yuhauran, according to my observation just now, your current foundation can be described as deep as the ocean. It's enough for your mental state cultivation, physical body grade, elemental force, and soul power to reach the peak of Emperor Wu's 9th rank before you can break through to Emperor Wu's realm. Fouling suddenly paused for a moment and used his divine sense to observe what Yuhau's innate bones again before sighing with a complicated expression. However, because your innate bones have been replaced with those of a martial saint, the extent of the increase in your potential has far exceeded the limit that I can see. Therefore, I'm afraid that you'll have to verify the depth of your foundation through your own advancement in realm. I can't give you an accurate answer. Although Fouling didn't give a specific answer in the end, Yuhauran was very happy about the final advancement in his mental state cultivation physical body grade, elemental force, and soul power, excluding the effect that the martial saint's corpse had on strengthening one's foundation and potential. Brother Yu, thank you. Pallas, who had successfully suppressed his breakthrough in realm and received Thaling's warning and guidance, stood up excitedly and cupped his hands to thank Yu Howren. Brother Chi, with the friendship between you and me, protecting you is my duty. You don't have to be so courteous. Yu Howren waved his hand to indicate that Pallas didn't need to be courteous as he turned his head to look at the west of Green Lake. Chapter 1706. Foam Run City was surrounded by the Qinghu mountain range to the west, the 9 mythical beast mountains to the south, the Hongyang River to the north, and the boundless open plains to the east. It was a strategic location with abundant heaven and earth spiritual qi. It was easy to defend and hard to attack. Looking at the majestic ancient city built on the 9 god beast mountains, Yu Howren was thinking about how to take down Foam Run City in the shortest time possible. At the same time, he was waiting for the pagoda spirit's reply. He wanted to see if the geographical environment of Foam Run City was suitable for setting up the defensive array formation of the sun, moon, and stars. Yu Howren, according to the Foam Run City's earth veins, not only can I set up the defensive formation of the sun, moon, and stars perfectly, but I can also use the unique terrain of the 9 divine beast mountains to set up a peak heaven rank offensive formation. After carefully observing the earth veins of the entire Foam Run City with his powerful divine sense of the third tribulation demigod realm, Thaling couldn't help but remind him in surprise. If Lan Rong and the other 7th to 9th grade martial saint realm experts control the offensive formation, not only can it easily kill a peak 9th grade martial revered realm expert, but can also severely injure a peak 3rd grade martial saint realm expert like Emperor Wu. The sun, moon, and stars formation, which used a middle-level force spiritual vein as its energy source, could defend against a peak 9th grade martial saint realm expert like Emperor Wu. The peak heaven rank offensive formation, which relied on the 9 divine beast mountains, could kill a peak 9th grade martial saint realm expert and severely injure a peak 3rd grade martial saint realm expert like Emperor Wu. Even if the Great Han Empire was far stronger than the Emperor Qin Empire, there shouldn't be many martial saint realm experts like Emperor Wu. Therefore, they didn't dare to send many Emperor Wu and martial saint realm experts to attack the city, and they couldn't tolerate the loss of these experts. Therefore, after hearing Thaling's reply, Yu Howren's face flashed with a trace of surprise. He knew that taking down Foam Run City meant that the first step of the war in the eastern region was successful. The next expedition to the east and the expansion of the territory would be Lan Rong's responsibility. After forcefully suppressing the joy in his heart, Yu Howren began to think about how to smoothly take over Foam Run City. Although Foam Run City was a strategic location that was easy to defend and difficult to attack, the only threat that could be posed to the great Emperor Qin's kingdom was blocked by the Qinghu mountain range. This caused the Great Han Empire to not pay enough attention to Foam Run City. Not only was there no army stationed in Foam Run City, but he had also used Emperor Wu's divine sense to check the number of experts in the city. In the end, he found that the strongest expert in the city was only a peerless expert at the peak of 3rd grade, revered martial artist. In other words, it wouldn't be difficult to take down Foam Run City. However, the only troublesome thing that needed to be avoided was how to ensure that certain people in the city wouldn't use special means to secretly inform the Great Han Empire's Ministry of War and the imperial family. After all, not only did the setting up of the lunisolar formation and the offensive formation require a certain amount of time, but the process of setting up the formation and forming the hand seals must not be disturbed. After thinking about it, Yu Howren finally decided to wait until nightfall. He and Pallas would use sneak attacks to kill all the suspects in the city who were secretly in contact with the great Emperor Qin's kingdom. After that, they would lead the army to officially take over Foam Run City. Of course, with Thaling's strength as a 3rd tribulation demigod and the divine sense secret attack technique, he could instantly kill all the suspects. However, he didn't want Thaling to do so. Firstly, he hoped to increase his ability to adapt to changes through the process of taking over Feng Run City. Secondly, he hoped to use sneak attacks to raise his status in the hearts of the 100,000 elite soldiers and increase their sense of worship and belonging. After informing Thowling of his thoughts and plans and obtaining further information from him, Yuhauran and Palace discussed the distribution of the targets and areas for the sneak attack. As the darkness descended, Yuhauran ordered Lan Rong and the rest to pay attention to the whereabouts and aura of the army and to be prepared to send troops to take over Feng Run City. After that, he brought Palace and approached Feng Run City quietly. Perhaps it was because Feng Run City was too remote, or perhaps it was because the mayor wasn't very good at business and management. There were very few entertainment activities in the city, other than 2 brothels and 3 casinos that were still brightly lit. The other places had long been plunged into endless darkness. Brother Qi, let's end this quickly. Similar to most of the cities in the Tianxian continent, Feng Run City's mayor's mansion occupied the entire North City district. The nobles lived in the East City district, the rich lived in the West City district, and the poor lived in the South City district. According to the initial distribution plan, Yuhauran went straight to the East City district where the high officials and nobles lived. He whispered to the Scarlet Loaf, "Got it." After nodding in response, Palace instantly disappeared from the city wall. According to the results of his re-examination with divine telekinesis, Yuhauran knew that there were not many people in the East City district who were in contact with the Great Emperor's Empire's Ministry of War and the imperial family. There were only the commander of the city guards, the inspector in charge of supervising the army, and the patriarch of the Yuan clan, one of the 5 major clans in Feng Run City. After quietly sneaking into the governor's mansion, Yuhauran used his divine telekinesis to lock onto the commander of the city guards who had just advanced to the martial venerable realm. With the assistance of the law of flash and light, he instantly appeared behind the commander and directly knocked him out before he could sense the danger. After that, he pressed his left hand directly on the commander's head and began to use the demon sex secret soul-searching technique to forcefully check the commander's memory. Looks like the result is similar to my speculation. It's really the dozen or so people that I've locked onto with my divine telekinesis have the ability and means to secretly contact the Great Han Empire's Ministry of War and the imperial family. After checking the commander's memory, Yuhauran's face revealed a hint of joy as he softly muttered to himself. After that, he directly crushed the commander's head and soul. After taking the storage ring on his finger, he did not immediately leave the room. Instead, he walked to a bookshelf on the east side of the room and waved his hand to move the entire bookshelf to one side. Yuhauran's inexplicable actions immediately attracted the attention of Thowling, who had promised not to help. When he saw that behind the bookshelf that had been moved was still an ordinary white wall, he immediately used his divine telekinesis to check the entire white wall. However, the result was that his divine telekinesis directly penetrated the white wall and did not discover any hidden passageways or mechanisms behind the white wall. This made Thowling unable to help but ask, "Yuhauran, what are you trying to do?" Ignoring Thowling's question, Yuhauran stretched out his finger and began to tap on the wall while recalling the commander's memory that he had just checked. Chapter 1707. Feng Run City, in the city guard commander's mansion. As his 5 fingers slowly withdrew from the wall, a jade pendant shaped like a flying black eagle appeared in his hand. There's not a trace of spirit chi fluctuation. This is just an ordinary jade pendant with exquisite workmanship. When he saw the black eagle jade pendant in Yuhauran's hand, Thowling's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. However, when he used his divine sense to scan the jade pendant, his surprise was instantly replaced by disappointment. In response, Yuhauran still ignored him and put away the black eagle jade pendant. He then quietly snuck into the backyard of the mansion and stood in front of a beautiful and exquisite attic. After his divine sense swept through all the rooms in the attic, Yuhauran couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. After a trace of embarrassment flashed across his face, he finally waited in the courtyard for a while. This was because the second target of the city guard commander's mansion was the mistress of this mansion. In other words, her cultivation and strength were slightly stronger than the city guard commander's wife. She was a coquettish woman with an angelic appearance and a devilish figure. The reason why Yuhaoran felt a little embarrassed was because she was currently bathing naked. Although he was no longer an inexperienced fledgling after experiencing the nourishment of Qin Ling Fei, he still couldn't bear to directly send her to hell when faced with a woman whose figure and appearance didn't lose to the ancient demon clans. Fortunately, when he snuck into the courtyard of the attic, the woman was about to finish her bath. After waiting for less than 3 minutes in the courtyard, the woman returned to the bedroom wearing a bath towel. Using the law of void that he comprehended from the void fruit, he quietly snuck into the bedroom and used his powerful strength to knock out her spirit in advance before she noticed. However, when she fainted on the bed, an accident occurred. The bath towel on her body suddenly fell off. A scene that could make one's blood boil made Yuhaoran subconsciously turn his head to avoid it. No matter how beautiful the woman's figure was, or how alluring the scene was, to the device spirit of the primordial supreme treasure, it was no different from facing a tree, a rock, or a dead body. However, Yuhaoran's state of mind had already reached the peak of the 5th pin of the Emperor Wu, and his determination as a second reincarnation was also quite outstanding. Logically speaking, he should be able to ignore the other party's temptation. Therefore, Thaling, who felt a little puzzled, used his divine telekinesis to carefully examine the beautiful woman who had been knocked unconscious. Then, he reminded with a solemn expression, Yuhaoran, this woman is not simple. Yuhaoran used his elemental energy to wrap a long black robe in the bedroom and cover the woman's body. Yuhaoran turned around to observe her. Other than her charm that far surpassed most women in the world, he didn't find anything special about her. Yuhaoran, although the fall of the Xia, Shang, and Zhou dynasties in the Middle Ages had something to do with their fates running out, it wasn't like there was no way to save them. However, due to the appearance of the 3 special women, not only did it lead to the fall of the 3 dynasties, but it was also brought forward by almost 10,000 years. The origin of the woman in front of him was too mysterious. It was normal that Yuhaoran couldn't find anything unusual about her. Therefore, Thaling used a practical example to explain the woman's origin, and at the same time, he hoped to make him highly vigilant. As there were many inherited families in the Middle Ages, there were more detailed records of some of the major events in the Middle Ages in the Tianxin continent. Femme Fatale destroyed the Shang dynasty, and a smile from Bao Si destroyed the Western Zhou dynasty. This was the most direct evaluation of the fall of the Shang and Zhou dynasties by the ancients. Femme Fatale referred to Su Daji, who seduced the last emperor of the Shang dynasty, causing him to be distracted from the affairs of the court. She was cruel and merciless, causing the fate of the Shang dynasty to fall rapidly and its fates to flow faster. A smile from Bao Si referred to the last emperor of the Zhou dynasty. In order to win a smile from a beauty, he ignited the fire platform of the nation and played with the loyalty of hundreds of vassals, causing hundreds of vassals to fall out of favor. Femme Fatale, Su Daji, was a 9-tailed fox from the Green Hill Fox clan. The Bao Si and Bao Si smile was Zi Xiao, who had the noblest bloodline in the Kunlun Mountains. It was because of Su Daji and Bao Si's heroic deeds that the Green Hill Fox clan and Zi Xiao clan became famous demon clans in the Middle Ages and recent ages. They were also the beauties that countless men dreamed of having. The last emperor of the Xia dynasty who surrendered the ruling power of the Xia dynasty was not retreating from the stage of history willingly. It was also because of a woman whose beauty and charm far surpassed Su Daji and Bao Si. According to Thaling's narration, the last emperor of the Xia dynasty was not only a courteous and thrifty emperor who loved his people, but also a peak 9th-level martial god expert who had the potential to break through to the supremacy realm. With the ambition and strength of the last emperor of the Xia dynasty, he could completely lead the dynasty to an unprecedented height. However, When he was ambitious enough to conquer the boundless void, he unexpectedly met a young woman, a woman who he could not extricate himself from, a woman who made him listen to her every word. It was because he listened to that woman's orders and suggestions that not only did the last emperor of the Xia dynasty cancel his plan to conquer the boundless void, he even disregarded the advice of the civil and military officials and forcefully disbanded his invincible elite army. At the same time, a year later, the Shang clan even handed over the flourishing Xia dynasty to the Shang clan. Faling, who is that woman? What kind of heaven-defying background does she have? Even a peak 9th level martial god expert like the Divine Spirit Emperor could lose his mind. Yu Haoran became vigilant, but he also developed a strong interest in that woman. Yu Haoran, because it's a scandal involving a peak 9th level martial god king, the Xia clan is very secretive about that woman's name and background. I don't know much about the inside story. Faced with Yu Haoran's interrogation, Faling first explained himself in advance, then began to roughly explain the woman's background. According to the memories of a core member of the Xia clan, that woman is called Xu Mei. She seems to be from the legendary succubus tribe. Succubus tribe? Hearing Faling mention a legendary tribe, Yu Haoran's face could not help but change slightly. In his previous life, he had once seen a simple record of the succubus tribe in a relic in a boundless swamp. It was said that the succubus tribe was the only living creature born from the chaos, and they had a special temperament that could bewitch all living creatures. It was said that the succubus tribe was the sister of the ancient god Pangu who had successfully created the chaos space. They had always hated the world that had caused the death of their brother, and they intended to start an immeasurable calamity that would destroy the world. Chapter 1708. Feng Run City, in the city guard commander's residence. It was said to be a legend. Since it was a race that appeared in legends, it was most likely fake. Therefore, regarding the existence of the succubi and their various heaven-defying abilities, the world only treated it as a topic of discussion. No one believed that it was real. However, when Faling mentioned the succubi that caused the Xia dynasty's destruction, Yu Haoran had a very strong feeling in his heart. He felt that the legendary succubi not only existed, but also had the heaven-defying ability to bewitch all living things. Faling would definitely not mention the succubi for no reason when he had ambushed and killed an important target in Feng Run City. Since he had taken the initiative to mention it and explained it in such detail, it was enough to prove that the woman in front of him was either the legendary succubi that bewitched all living things, or she was a descendant of the succubi's bloodline. Yu Haoran, your guess is correct. The woman in front of you definitely has a trace of the succubi's bloodline. Faling nodded after hearing Yu Haoran's speculation. Faling, that's not right. Although he had received Faling's confirmation, Yu Haoran could not help but ask another question. If the Xia dynasty's destruction is related to the succubi, it means that the succubi have the same arrogant personality as the Green Hill Fox clan and the Purple Shao clan. Then, the target of her bewitchment would at least be the emperor of the 3 great empires, or the clan leader of a hidden family with an inheritance. How could she be by the side of a city guard commander? Yu Haoran, to be honest, I don't know what this woman wants to do either. Faling smiled bitterly and shook his head after hearing Yu Haoran's question. Since he could not guess the true intentions of the woman with the succubi's bloodline, he could only use the most direct and simplest method, which was to use the soul-searching technique to read her memories. But just as his left hand was about to touch her head, Faling stopped him and reminded him. Yu Haoran, as an existence that can confuse all living beings, the godly soul of the succubus is different from that of ordinary creatures. The memories of the godly soul are hidden in different spaces. Even if I personally act, I cannot see this woman's memories. After hearing Faling's reminder, Yu Haoran couldn't help but frown. He then helplessly withdrew his left hand from Faling's head. The reason why this woman, who had the inherited bloodline of the succubus, appeared in the Feng Run City's city guard commander's manor was too strange. If he didn't figure out the reason, he would feel uneasy. Since Howren could not find out the woman's true intentions through the soul-searching technique, and he did not want to let the uneasiness in his heart continue to bother him, his murderous intent instantly replaced his puzzled gaze. He decided to continue using the simplest and most convenient method to eliminate the hidden danger in his heart. That was to make this woman, who had the inherited bloodline of the succubus, who was full of endless temptation, completely disappear from the Tianxian continent. But just as he was about to directly smash her head and soul with his fist, Thowling stopped him again. Howren, since the beginning of the world until now, there is very little information about the succubus in the world. Those who can personally see the bloodline of the succubus are even rarer. So, I want to use the original Victor to temporarily suppress her, and then use her to study the bloodline of the succubus. I want to see why the succubus has the ability to confuse all living beings, and how they can place their memories in different spaces in the sea of consciousness. Okay, as the weapon spirit of an innate treasure, the succubus had the ability to confuse all living beings, but had no effect on Thowling. So, after hearing his suggestion, Howren thought about it for a while, nodded in agreement, and directly sent the woman into the space in the sea of consciousness. Then, he took a deep breath, forcibly dispelled the distracting thoughts in his heart, and quietly left the mansion of the city guard commander. He went straight to the third suspect in the East City District, the supervisor. As a supervisor who could supervise military affairs, whether it was in the Great Han Empire or the Great Emperor Qin Empire, they were a group of people with high authority. However, as a geographically remote Fengrun city, because it was not valued by the Ministry of War and the imperial family of the Great Han Empire, the supervisor assigned to Fengrun city became a dispensable role. Not only was the environment of the residence an ordinary courtyard with 2 entrances and 2 exits, but there were also no servants around to serve him. This allowed Howren to swagger into the mansion. However, when he easily knocked out the supervisor, who was only an early-stage 9th grade martial saint, with a cautious attitude, he used the soul-searching technique to check the supervisor's memories and discovered an earth-shattering secret. In fact, the reason why the Ministry of War and the imperial family of the Great Han Empire did not value Fengrun City was not because of its remote location, but because they did not want to attract too much attention and vigilance. The reason was that the 9 divine beast mountains in the south of Fengrun City were not ordinary mountains, but 9 real divine beast corpses. However, because of the long years of erosion and sedimentation, not only were the divine beast corpses covered by countless sand and vegetation, but even the divine aura emitted by the corpses was completely concealed. The main reason why the Ministry of War and the imperial family of the Great Han Empire did not take away the divine beast corpses was mainly because of the Empire's strength. They could not quietly move the 9 divine beast corpses, nor could they conceal the divine aura emitted by the corpses. However, according to the supervisor's memories, it seemed that with the recovery of the world's spiritual energy, the heavenly Tao, which had perfect laws, had entered a state of deep sleep. In the past few months, the number of experts who had broken through to the martial Venerable Realm and Emperor Wu Realm in the Great Han Empire's national strength had reached the peak. This allowed them to have the ambition and strength to move the divine beast corpses. Therefore, in the past month, they would send a large number of Emperor Wu and Martial Venerable Realm experts to sneak into Fengrun City and quietly move the 9 divine beast corpses from the divine beast mountains. After directly crushing the supervisor's head and soul, Howren directly told Thowling the secret he had just learned. After hearing the secret revealed by Howren, Thowling did not hesitate at all. He mobilized the origin energy of his main body, Victor, and assisted his 3rd tribulation demigod realm divine sense to directly penetrate the rocks and sand of the divine beast mountains to check the situation inside the mountains. 5 minutes later, Thowling withdrew his divine sense and asked with a look of disbelief in his eyes, Howren, do you know which 9 divine beast corpses are in the divine beast mountains? Chapter 1709. Phone Run City. In the Invigilator's mansion. That's right. While nodding to confirm Howard's guess, Thowling looked at the 9 mountains outside Phone Run City through the barrier of the consciousness space and explained with a look of shock in his eyes. The 9 mountains are not only formed from the corpses of the direct descendants of Chionyo, Yazi, Bayan, Chao Feng, Jiao Bayan Chuan, and Pai Xiao, but the bloodline origin of the 9 divine beasts comes from the same divine dragon. That is to say, the 9 divine beast corpses in the divine beast mountain are blood brothers of the same father and mother. Sizzle. After hearing Thowling's explanation, Howard could not help but gasp. Although it was said that a dragon gave birth to 9 different sons, the natural breeding process of the dragon clan was very difficult due to the influence of a special body constitution, let alone a divine dragon that had reached the divine realm. Under normal circumstances, an ordinary dragon couple would be very lucky if they could successfully give birth to 1 offspring in their lifetime. Being able to give birth to 2 offspring could be said to be as rare as phoenix feathers and Sheelan horns. As for having more than 3 offspring, it was basically a rumor and a dream. Therefore, after recovering from the shock, Howard asked in disbelief, "Thowling, are you sure you didn't see wrongly? You should judge for yourself." It was as if the tower's spirit had expected Howard to question it. While it was inspecting the 9 god beast corpses, it also collected the god spirit presence of the 9 god beast corpses. Looking at the 9 divine auras floating in front of him, Howard forcibly suppressed the fear that emerged in his heart. He slowly closed his eyes, intending to carefully feel the bloodline origin of the 9 divine auras. However, at this moment, Chualong, who had signed a beast pet contract with him, crossed the barrier of the beast pet space without his consent and appeared in front of the 9 divine auras. Then, Chualong opened his transparent mouth and inhaled the 9 divine auras into his body. Then, his body, which was only about 30 centimeters long, expanded to nearly 1 meter at a visible speed. "Thowling, what's going on?" Looking at the Hui dragon that could increase its grade and strength by absorbing the 9 divine auras, Howard did not have the time to criticize it for acting on its own. He quickly asked the Thowling in his sea of consciousness, "Howard, the reason why the Hui dragon hasn't been able to advance to the ancestral dragon or even become a divine dragon since the primordial era, other than being hunted down by the dragon clan and demonic beasts with dragon bloodlines, is that the energy that can accelerate its advancement is too scarce." Thowling wasn't surprised at all that the nightmare dragon was able to leave Howard's pet space and absorb the divine dragon's aura to improve its grade and strength. The 9 sons of the divine dragon, who share the same origin, are the strongest energy that can help it advance quickly. Thowling, don't tell me you want the Hui dragon to devour the 9 mystical dragon corpses in the mythical beast mountain? Thowling's slightly excited explanation made a thought flash through Howard's mind. He couldn't help but ask with heartache. After all, ever since they signed the pet beast contract, the Hui dragon had ignored him even when he tried to chat with him, let alone provide any help. Using the 9 precious mystical dragon corpses to improve the Hui dragon's strength wasn't of much help to him, and they didn't have a deep relationship. Deep down, he was reluctant to do so. That's right. While nodding to confirm Howard's guess, Thowling also knew the reason for his heartache and hurriedly explained with a smile. Howard, it's not that the Hui dragon doesn't want to talk to you, but as a dragon with the potential to become the ancestral dragon, the Hui dragon's pride far surpasses that of ordinary dragons. Black Bear can help you kill your enemies. Winged Dragon can bring you on your journey. Only Winged Dragon, who possesses heaven-defying potential, is unable to help you due to his low strength. This has caused Winged Dragon to feel extremely guilty, and at the same time, anger has been burning inside him. At this point, Thowling glanced at the Hui dragon who was staring unblinkingly at the mythical beast mountain and took the initiative to assure him. Howard, once the Hui dragon devours and refines the 9 mystical dragon corpses in the mythical beast mountain, you will realize that he is the most suitable partner to fight alongside. You will feel that he is the most loyal friend. Sigh. After hearing Thowling's explanation and assurance, Howard couldn't help but sigh softly and nod in agreement while suppressing his inner reluctance. All right then. The moment Howard nodded in agreement, the Hui dragon, whose body was already close to transparent, disappeared into thin air as though it had teleported due to its extreme speed. Since he had already agreed to let the Hui dragon use the 9 mystical dragon corpses to improve its grade and strength, Howard couldn't help but look forward to the pleasant surprise that the Hui dragon could bring him. However, when he thought of the Hui dragon's current grade and strength, as well as the 9 mystical dragons, he couldn't help but start to worry about the time the Hui dragon would take to refine the mystical dragon corpses. If the Hui dragon needed hundreds or thousands of years to help him after refining the 9 mystical dragon corpses, then with the speed of his cultivation and strength improvement, there was probably nothing to look forward to. Howard, due to the lack of energy that can assist in its advancement, the Hui dragon can only use most of its time to comprehend the realm. Therefore, although its current grade and strength are not strong, it will be able to successfully refine one of the mystical dragon corpses in 7 days and raise its grade to the peak of Emperor Wu's 9th grade. After hearing Howard's worries, Thowling smiled and comforted him. At the same time, because they share the same bloodline, the Hui dragon can stop refining the remaining mystical dragon corpses at any time. 7 days. In just 7 days, he would have an Emperor Wu's 9th grade pet beast by his side. Thowling's explanation made Howard wild with joy, and at the same time, he was looking forward to the Hui dragon devouring and refining the other 8 mystical dragon corpses. Thowling, then how long will the Hui dragon take to refine the remaining 8 mystical dragon corpses? What kind of realm will it reach in the end? I don't know either. Looking at the Hui dragon that had successfully merged into Chionyo's body, Thowling shook his head and replied, "After all, the Hui dragon that you have is very likely to be the only ancestral dragon that has the ability to break through to the godly state and sovereign state since ancient times. Next, how high can it achieve and how long will it take? I'm afraid we can only wait." Although Thowling didn't give an accurate answer, Howard was very satisfied that the Hui dragon could reach the peak of the 9th grade martial emperor realm within 7 days. Chapter 1710. In Fengrun City. To be able to have a place in the eastern region where the high officials and nobles lived by means of family inheritance, it was enough to show that the Yuan family had a deep foundation. Therefore, Howard did not swagger as he did when he entered the supervisor's mansion. He quietly sneaked into the Yuan family's mansion and began to slowly approach the backyard of the mansion. But just as he was about to arrive at the Yuan clan patriarch's courtyard, a 28-year-old woman wearing a green corset dress and a black silk veil on her face entered his eyes. She had an aura like an orchid. Looking at the woman in the green dress, who was also quietly approaching the courtyard of the Yuan family's patriarch, Howard could not help but frown. Because the cultivation of the other party was only at the peak of the 7th grade martial saint, while the Yuan family's patriarch was a peerless expert at the peak of the 2nd grade martial saint realm of Emperor Wu. With the cultivation of the woman in the green dress, he was afraid that the moment she sneaked into the courtyard, she would be discovered by the other party, which would destroy his plan of sneak attacking and soul-searching. Without much consideration, he flashed the power of the dual laws and instantly appeared behind the woman in the green dress. He planned to use his powerful cultivation to first make the other party unconscious for a period of time, but the woman in the green dress suddenly disappeared in front of him. Even if he immediately mobilized the divine sense of Emperor Wu at the peak of the 5th grade martial saint realm, he would not be able to track the other party's aura. At the same time, the other party had a very special fragrance on her body, which made him lose the means of tracking by smell. Thowling, where is that woman? After the failure of both the divine sense and the means of tracking by smell, Howard had no choice but to ask for help from Thowling, who was stronger. Howard, I'm also unable to use my divine sense to track and lock onto that woman's aura. Just when the woman in the green dress suddenly disappeared, Thowling immediately mobilized his divine sense to search, and the result was also out of his expectations. To be able to evade the tracking of his and Thaling's divine senses with the cultivation of an early third-grade martial saint, it could only mean that the other party possessed a top-notch magical artifact that could conceal his presence and aura. The other party's background immediately aroused Yu Haoran's intense interest. In the Xianshui turtle's nest at the bottom of the Green Lake, Thaling couldn't find any traces of the bandits after the China Coco's flower disappeared inexplicably. This made Thaling very angry. Now, a mere little girl who was only a third-grade martial saint had once again disappeared from right under his nose. Furthermore, he was also unable to track her down. This completely enraged Thaling. After transferring Victor's origin energy into his divine soul body, Thaling's fingers began to cast the forbidden secret technique as fast as lightning. When his 10 fingers formed over 100 seals, they formed an airtight net that enveloped the entire courtyard. Then, the net began to close in little by little. When the net-like secret technique closed in on the attic of the courtyard, Thaling's face immediately revealed a trace of joy as he reminded, "Yu Haoran, I found that woman's trace." "Where's she?" Yu Haoran immediately asked. "Right outside the Yuan family patriarch study." While Thaling pointed out the other party's precise location, he also began to mobilize the powerful divine sense of a third tribulation demigod to carefully examine how the other party was able to evade the tracking of his and Yu Haoran's divine senses. So it's because of this. The woman in the azure-robed dress was holding a small and exquisite oil lamp in her left hand, and the tower spirit came to a sudden realization. "Thaling, what level of magical artifact is that oil lamp in the woman's hand?" After being alerted by the pagoda spirit, Hanli used his spiritual sense to track down the woman in the green dress. At the same time, he also caught sight of the burning oil lamp in her hand, and he couldn't help but ask in a surprised manner. This was because it was very likely that the other party had used this burning oil lamp to evade the tracking of his and Thaling's divine senses. In response to Yu Haoran's questioning, Thaling's eyes flashed with a strange light as he explained, "Yu Haoran, that oil lamp is only a very ordinary high-grade Emperor artifact. What truly allowed her to evade our tracking is the burning oil in the lamp." Lamp oil. After hearing Thaling's explanation, Yu Haoran subconsciously wanted to use his divine sense to examine the energy contained in the lamp oil. However, the attic of the courtyard in front of him was suddenly replaced by a vast ocean. At the same time, huge waves that were thousands of meters high rapidly crashed towards him. However, at this moment, Thaling's voice immediately rang in his ears. "Wake up!" Accompanied by Thaling's voice, the vast ocean in front of him turned back into the attic of the courtyard, and the woman in the green dress holding the oil lamp in her hand. "Thaling, what's going on?" Yu Haoran asked with a slightly frightened expression when he thought of the 1,000-meter wave that was no less powerful than Emperor Wu's attack. The helplessness and insignificance that emerged in his heart made him ask with a slightly frightened expression. "Yu Haoran, the burning oil in the oil lamp is actually the oil of the sea god's corpse. It can form a stronger hallucination effect than the 1,000 soft 100 charm fragrance." When he heard Yu Haoran's slightly panicked questioning, Thaling looked at the oil lamp in the woman's hand and explained, "It's precisely because you and I have fallen into the hallucination formed by the oil of the sea god that we can't use our divine sense and smell to track that woman's whereabouts." Sea god. After hearing Thaling's explanation, Yu Haoran couldn't help but furrow his brow. In his previous life, under the lead of the Void Spirit Mouse, he had explored countless ruins and cave dwellings, but he had never taken the risk to enter the Four Seas. The reason was that the Void Spirit Mouse was naturally afraid of water, so he didn't know much about the sea series of Yao and exotic beasts, let alone the legends and records of the sea god. Yu Haoran, the so-called sea god, doesn't refer to sea beasts that have reached the deity level, but specifically refers to the most noble bloodline among the sea series of Yao, the mermaid. Seeing Yu Haoran's tightly furrowed brows, Thaling knew that he definitely didn't know much about the sea series of Yao, so he took the initiative to explain. "Thaling, Could it be that the so-called mermaid has the body of a human and the tail of a fish? Hearing Thaling's explanation mention mermaids, Howard suddenly remembered that in his previous life, in a cave dwelling near the East Sea, he had once read a poignant love story between the owner of the cave dwelling and a mermaid in a jade slip. That's right. Nodding his head in agreement, Thaling looked straight at the woman's legs that were covered by the green dress and carefully explained the origin of mermaids and their abilities. According to Thaling, mermaids were the offspring of the divine beasts white mantis and scarlet mantis in ancient times. White mantis as the father, scarlet mantis as the mother. White mantis as a human, scarlet mantis as a fish. Therefore, the offspring of the union between the two were mermaids with the body of a human and the tail of a fish. Chapter 17:11. Inside the Yuan family mansion. Mermaids who inherited the bloodlines of the ancient divine beasts, white centipede and scarlet centipede, were like the gods and demons of the ancient times. They were all favored by the heavens and earth. The human body of the snake beauty was not only pure and beautiful, but also sexy and charming. Her body constantly emitted a fragrance that could make countless creatures fall for her. At the same time, newborn mermaids had the strength of a seventh-stage king, while adult mermaids had the strength of a fifth-stage saint. Although they were favored by the heavens and earth like the gods and demons of the ancient times, their temperaments could be described as worlds apart. The gods of the ancient times were sinister and cunning, while the demons of the ancient times were cruel and bloodthirsty. The birth of these two races represented the arrival of disaster. Mermaids, on the other hand, had a very gentle temperament. They did not have the ambition to conquer the world, and rarely had conflicts with other races. It was because of their gentle temperament that they were almost isolated from the world that there were very few records of them in the world. At the same time, it allowed their inheritance and strength to be completely preserved. It could be said that the clans and races that were truly capable of conquering the Tianxian continent were not the four great divine beast clans that claimed to be the protectors of the continent, nor were they the five great divine beast clans that were hidden from a world. Instead, it was the mermaid clan that was not affected by the destruction of the ancient, middle, and recent times. After hearing Thaling's introduction of the mermaid clan, Howard was filled with respect. At the same time, he could not help but observe the lady in the green dress more carefully. Suddenly, he was completely confused by the strong, murderous aura that appeared in her eyes. Thaling, didn't you just say that mermaids have a gentle temperament and never take the initiative to fight with others? Then why did she suddenly appear in Fengrun City today and look at the Yuan family patriarch with such hatred? Howard, if I'm not wrong, the Yuan family should have taken advantage of a month ago when the tide source of the EC erupted to secretly capture a young mermaid who was related to her by blood. Through the window of the attic, Thaling looked at the Yuan family patriarch who was sitting in front of the desk. Her tone revealed a trace of indifference as she speculated. Otherwise, how would a mermaid who has just reached adulthood and has not mastered the secret bloodline inheritance dare to risk her life to sneak into Fengrun City? Damn it. After hearing Thaling's conjecture, Howard immediately thought of the auction held by the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion in Xianyang City, where they had auctioned off the heavily injured Snake Lady. The impact of self-reproach and guilt made his heart surge with a strong desire to kill. As the favored child of heaven and earth, mermaids were quite sensitive to auras. Just as Howard's heart began to surge with killing intent, the woman in the green dress had already sensed it. She did not hesitate to turn around and leave the courtyard. "Miss, please stop." After that, Howard signaled Thaling to quickly deploy a formation that could shield his voice and aura. After that, he strode out from behind a big tree with a crooked neck. "Who are you?" The woman's complexion changed as soon as she saw Howard walk out from behind the big tree. She immediately took out a three-pronged pitchfork and asked in a frosty voice. She then took out a high-grade Sage Realm magic tool. "Miss, don't misunderstand. I have no ill intentions." Howard spread out his hands and smiled. The woman in the green dress frowned slightly. She did not relax in the slightest because of Yu Haoran's kindness. She still held the trident tightly in her hand and asked with a vigilant expression, "Who are you? How did you discover me?" "My surname is Yu, and my name is Haoran. I'm the prince consort of the Emperor Qin Kingdom." Yu Haoran respected the mermaid's way of doing things and was angry at the Yuan clan leader's actions. He took the initiative to step forward to help the woman. Therefore, in order to ease the woman's vigilance, he chose to answer truthfully. "As for why I was able to resist the sea god's fantasy dream, it might have something to do with my strength and determination. You know who I am." When a woman in the green dress heard Yu Haoran mention the sea god's fantasy dream, her face under the black veil instantly turned as pale as paper. Her voice even carried a trace of fear as she asked. This was because the woman in the green dress knew very well how fatal the temptation of her true form was to greedy and selfish humans. "Miss, 2 years ago, I once saved a heavily injured snake beauty. After I healed her injuries, I took the initiative to let her leave." Knowing the reason why the woman was so frightened, Yu Haoran took a few steps back to show his kindness. He also immediately used Ruyun as an example to prove his character. "So, miss, you don't have to worry that I will have any improper thoughts towards you." After hearing Yu Haoran's example, the woman in the green dress's nervous and frightened emotions eased a little. However, when she thought of how cunning and sinister humans were, she still maintained a high level of vigilance and asked, "What are you doing here?" "I have a grudge against this person." Yu Haoran pointed at the room in the attic where the lights were on and replied without blushing or skipping a beat. After hearing Yu Haoran's lie, the woman in the green dress's eyes immediately flashed with a trace of surprise. Then, her tone was full of pleading. "Young hero Yu, since you also have a grudge against this person, then Qing Ro would like to ask for your help. Would you be willing?" "Miss, please speak." Although he had already guessed the content of her request, in order to avoid causing a misunderstanding, Yu Haoran pretended not to know. "Help me save a person." "Who?" "My younger sister, Qingxi." "No problem." At the same time as he nodded in agreement, Yu Haoran directly used the law of flash and light to appear in the study behind the Yuan clan head. Moreover, he took advantage of the fact that the Yuan clan head had not sensed the danger and directly knocked him unconscious with the same method. He also took the opportunity to seal his soul. Looking at the position where Yu Haoran just disappeared from, Qing Ro's eyes flashed with a trace of shock. As the strongest monster in the deep sea, the mermaid clan was not affected by the destruction of the ancient and Middle Ages. There were powerhouses of different realms in the clan. Although Qing Ro's realm was not very high, her special identity allowed her to personally experience the aura of Wu Zun, Emperor Wu, and martial realm powerhouses. Just now, when Yu Haoran used the law of force and soul power, the aura that leaked out let Qing Ro know that he was an almighty powerhouse that had the strength of Emperor Wu. When she thought that the handsome young man who gave people a feeling of wanting to get close to actually had the terrifying strength of the Emperor realm, Qing Ro felt incomparably shocked, and a kind of curiosity emerged in her heart. Driven by curiosity, she suddenly wanted to truly understand this young man, wanted to know what kind of outstanding person he was. Chapter 17:12. Fengrun City, in the Yuan family's mansion. After receiving Yu Haoran's invitation, Qing Ro quickly extinguished the thought that emerged in her mind and appeared in the Yuan family patriarch study in a flash. "Lady Qing Ro, I can be considered to have a certain level of understanding towards the clan head of the Yuan clan. I know that torture is useless against people like him." Yu Haoran didn't want to waste too much time and energy on the Yuan family patriarch. Thus, after Qing Ro entered the room, he found an excuse to use the soul-searching secret technique. "Therefore, I need to use a more cruel method to know the exact location of your sister." All right. She could roughly guess what kind of cruel means Yu Haoran was talking about. Although the docile Qing Ro couldn't bear to do it, when she thought about how her underage younger sister might be in danger of being humiliated, she finally nodded in agreement. Yu Haoran placed his hand on the Yuan family patriarch's head and began to use the soul-searching secret technique to check his memories. The more secrets he learned, the more gloomy Yu Haoran's expression became. As a small family with less than 200 years of history, the Yuan family was able to become one of the 5 great families of Fengrun City and occupy a seat in the Eastern City District where high officials and nobles lived. The reason was that the Yuan family possessed a special beast-catching secret technique that could bring unimaginable wealth and benefits to the city lord of Fengrun City. It was also because of the city lord's mansion's support that the Yuan family was able to gain a foothold and expand in Fengrun City. Miss Qingro, your sister is currently being held captive in the city lord's mansion. After I deal with the other 2 enemies, I'll immediately bring you to the city lord's mansion to rescue Miss Qingxi. Through the soul-searching secret technique, Yu Haoran not only found out that the Yuan family had connections with important people in the Great Han Empire, he also found the whereabouts of Qingrou's sister, Qingxi. I'll follow young master's arrangements. Qingrou, who had snuck into Fengrun City half a month ago, already had some understanding of the city lord's mansion's strength. She knew that it would be difficult to rescue Qingxi with her own strength. She needed the help of this young man before her. At the same time, if she wanted to understand this young man who made her curious, she would need more time to interact with him. Thus, facing Yu Haoran's suggestion, Qingrou meekly nodded in agreement. After indicating for Qingrou to leave the room first, Yu Haoran waved his sleeve and shot out a powerful origin energy, directly turning the Yuan family head into minced meat. Then, he took the opportunity to pick up the storage ring that fell on the ground. After that, according to the information he obtained from the Yuan family patriarch, he killed the Yuan family patriarch's first wife and his trusted butler. Then, he brought Qingrou to a large tree about 100 meters away from the mayor's mansion. Brother Yu, you're 7 minutes late than the agreed time. Just as Yu Haoran and Qingrou arrived in front of the big tree outside the city lord's mansion, Palace walked out from behind the big tree and reminded. Palace's sudden appearance gave Qingrou a fright, especially when she saw his unbearably ugly appearance. She took a few steps back out of fear. However, when she felt a trace of familiar bloodline aura from him, the fear in her eyes was immediately replaced by doubt. Then, she walked in front of Palace and looked straight at his ugly appearance. She asked very politely, "May I ask, who are you? Why do you give Qingrou a feeling of closeness from my bloodline?" Brother Yu, should we act now? As a scarlet-loathed beast whose grade and strength were far superior to Qingrou's, the moment Qingrou appeared, he had already found out the other party's true origin through the connection between their bloodlines. However, as he had no interest in the mermaid race, he directly ignored the other party's polite inquiry and deliberately avoided the other party's gaze as he asked Yu Haoran, "Let's act now." Knowing that Palace, who wanted to surpass his ancestors' bloodline, was the most unwilling to talk about his own hybrid bloodline, Yu Haoran also ignored Qingrou's polite question and nodded in agreement. Then, he turned his head and instructed her. "Qingrou, you stay here first. Only enter the city lord's mansion when you receive my message via divine sense. I'll follow your arrangements." After gently replying to Yu Haoran's instructions, Qingrou raised her head and looked at the indifferent Palace. Her eyes revealed a strong interest that clearly surpassed her curiosity towards Yu Haoran. As the overlord of Fengrun City, the city lord's mansion's strength was far superior to any other faction in the city. Just the number of martial venerables alone reached 3, and they were not inferior to some of the clans that had existed for more than 10,000 years. However, to Yu Haoran, who had the strength of Emperor Wu, and Palace, who had the strength of Emperor Wu, the city lord's mansion's strength was not even worth mentioning. After quietly sneaking into the city lord's mansion, Palace was responsible for clearing out all targets in the city lord's mansion that had connections with the Great Han Empire, while Yu Haoran dealt with City Lord Lu Jiji of the city lord's mansion. Using his divine sense to lock onto Lu Jiji's aura, after passing through many winding corridors and courtyards, he finally arrived in front of a rockery in the depths of the city lord's mansion. Looking at the rockery that was more than 3 meters tall, Howard slightly inspected it. Finally, in a corner of the rockery, he found a special groove. He took out a black eagle-shaped jade pendant from his storage ring, then directly inserted the jade pendant into the groove of the rockery. Immediately after, the 3-meter-tall rockery began to slowly split open from the middle, revealing a passageway that led to the underground. So this black eagle-shaped jade pendant is a special key. Seeing that Howard was able to open the rockery of the City Lord's mansion using the black eagle-shaped jade pendant that he obtained from the wall of the City Guard commander's study, Thowling was slightly surprised. Ignoring Thowling's exclamation, Howard casually took out the black eagle-shaped jade pendant that he had just placed in the groove and quickly entered the underground passageway before the rockery closed again. The underground passageway was not very long, only about 300 to 400 meters long. At the end of the passageway, there were 9 stone rooms that were made of gray rock. In a flash, he appeared in front of the 7th stone room. Howard stood in front of the door of the stone room for 3 seconds. Then he reached out and pushed open the stone door of the stone room. The moment the stone door was pushed open, the first thing that came into his sight were 13 iron cages made of black iron. Each iron cage contained a female creature. Why was it described as a female creature? That was because in the 13 iron cages in the stone room, other than the 8 beautiful girls that were locked up, there were also 3 snake beauties with snake tails and a mermaid that was as charming as a fairy. Chapter 17:13. Foam Run City, the City Lord's Mansion. In the 7th stone room, apart from the 13 female creatures, there was also a middle-aged man who had fainted in front of the iron cage. This person was Foam Run City's #1 expert, the City Lord of Foam Run City, Lu Jiji. However, he had already been knocked unconscious by Thowling's divine sense attack. "Who are you?" Just as Howard walked to Lu Jiji's side, intending to take him out of the stone room so that he could use the soul-searching secret technique to check his memories, a tall beauty in the iron cage suddenly asked. Turning his head to look at the other party, Howard discovered that the woman who had questioned him was not only a beautiful woman who was as clear as the autumn moon, but also had a gentle temperament like a spring breeze, giving people a feeling of wanting to get close to her. Howard immediately had a favorable impression of her and replied, "My surname is Yu, and my name is Howard. I have an undying enmity with the City Lord of Foam Run City, Lu Jiji." Speaking up to here, he raised his head and pointed at the pitiful mermaid with a pale face, and continued speaking with a gentle attitude. "At the same time, I am the person that Lady Qing Ro invited to save her sister Qing Si." After hearing Howard's reply, whether it was the mermaid Qing Si, the beautiful woman who had taken the initiative to question him, or the 10 beauties in the iron cage, their eyes all revealed expressions of surprise and excitement. "Ladies and gentlemen, please wait for a moment. After I have dealt with Lu Jiji, I will open the iron cage and let you out." Grabbing Lu Jiji's collar, Howard turned his head and warned the 12 beauties in the iron cage as he walked out of the stone room. Looking at Howard leaving the stone room, the 3 snake beauties and the mermaid in the iron cage only had the joy of being reborn in their eyes. However, to the other 8 human beauties, other than joy and excitement, there was also a trace of fanaticism and adoration in their eyes. After bringing Lu Jiji out of the stone room, Howard directly pressed his hand on Lu Jiji's head and then used the soul-searching secret technique to check his memories. 5 minutes later, after withdrawing his left hand from Lu Jiji's head, Howard's eyes were filled with surprise, relief, anger, expectation, and contemplation. Then, he put away the complicated look in his eyes and directly shattered Lu Jiji's head and soul. Then, he stepped back into the 7th stone room. He took out the celestial trapping sword from his storage ring and used the scabbard to smash the iron lock. Pah! With a soft shattering sound, the black iron lock was shattered by the scabbard. The girls in the cages only had their cultivations sealed, but their movements were not restricted. Therefore, he allowed the girl who had just opened the iron cage to walk out by herself. Yu Haoran swung the scabbard of the immortal trapping sword and smashed the iron locks of the remaining iron cages one after another. Shao Jie thanks you Shi Xiang for saving my life. After leaving the iron cage, the peerless young girl who had taken the initiative to talk to Yu Haoran leisurely walked in front of him and saluted with a slightly bashful look on her face. Junior Marshal's sister Xiao is too polite. After returning Shao Jie's salute with a gentle attitude, Yu Haoran walked to the corner of the stone room and looked at the black cloth that did not react to the iron lock that he had shattered with the scabbard of the immortal trapping sword. Yu Shixiang, I've been captured by Lu Jiji in this stone room for more than 3 months. Seeing Yu Haoran pay attention to the iron cage covered by the black cloth, Shao Jie, whose heart was palpitating, quickly walked to his side and reminded him. But in these 3 months, not only has the black cloth never been removed from the iron cage, the person locked in the iron cage has not eaten a single meal or drank a single drop of water. I know. After reading Lu Jiji's memories, Yu Haoran not only knew the situation that Shao Jie had just described, but also the origin of the woman under the black cloth. After opening the iron door of the iron cage, Yu Haoran bent down and entered the iron cage. He reached out and grabbed a corner of the black cloth, then forcefully removed the black cloth, revealing the person covered by the black cloth. Xiang Muling. After seeing the 2-meter-tall, burly, and dignified young girl in the iron cage, Shao Jie's eyes were filled with incomparable shock as she involuntarily cried out. Ignoring Shao Jie's involuntary cry, Yu Haoran bent down and entered the iron cage, then reached out and pressed his hand on the other party's forehead. After a careful inspection, Yu Haoran muttered to himself, other than the sealing pill that seals the soul and elemental energy, there's also the aura of soul enchanting powder and softening powder. Then he bent down and carried the burly young girl out of the iron cage, then took out 3 pill bottles from his storage ring and poured out a pill from one of the pill bottles. He then instructed Shao Jie, who was beside him. Junior Sister Xiao, there are a total of 18 4th-stage first-rank unsealing pills in the 2 pill bottles. They will be able to remove the seal in your body in half an hour, allowing you to completely return to your peak state. Thank you very much, Yu Shixiang. After reaching out to take the 2 pill bottles that Yu Haoran handed to her, Shao Jie was extremely emotional as she thanked him. Who was Yu Haoran? He was a dual martial emperor expert in alchemy and formation, the double champion of the Southern region and the 5 regions' hidden dragon rankings. He had once single-handedly challenged 11 quasi-venerable realm beasts in the Hengduan mountain range, and had once annihilated the Lung family in a fit of rage for a woman. With Yu Haoran's current fame and reputation, it could be said that there was basically no one who did not know about him. At the same time, he was an existence that was worshipped by the younger generation of the Tianxian continent. He was the Prince Charming in the hearts of thousands of young girls. Facing such an outstanding Yu Haoran, Shao Jie, who was secretly fearful, knew very well that if she wanted to successfully attract his attention and have the possibility of further development, she had to display monstrous talent. Then, how could she display monstrous talent? The only way was to remove the seal of the restriction pill in front of him and display a cultivation level and strength that far surpassed Qinling Fei. The only way was to use the recovered cultivation level and strength to increase her outstanding temperament and make him feel that she was an expert worth interacting with. Yu Haoran, who did not know Shao Jie's inner thoughts, turned around and looked at Xiang Muling, who was a head taller than him, with a trace of pity in his eyes. After that, he sent the restriction pill and detoxification pill to Xiang Muling's mouth at the same time. Just as he was about to help her consume the 2 pills, Faling suddenly asked in his mind, Yu Haoran, do you know what kind of monstrous talent this girl has? I know. Yu Haoran's left hand paused for a moment before sending the pill into her mouth without any hesitation. Yu Haoran nodded and replied, she is ranked 13th among the thousands of unique physiques in the Tianxian continent. She has the body of the war god, which can allow one to reach the martial god realm. Seeing that Yu Haoran was very clear about the origin of the body of the war god, Faling continued to ask with a serious expression, Chapter 1714. Phone Run City, the City Lord's Mansion. Unruly, arrogant, and ungrateful. Yu Haoran didn't hesitate at all as he pointed out the selfishness of a person with the physique of the war god. Since that's the case, why did you save her? The pagoda spirit was quite perplexed by Yu Haoran's insistence on saving this man, who possessed the body of the war god and was likely to become its mortal enemy in the immeasurable tribulation. Pity her, Yu Haoran sighed as he took a few steps back. Xiang Muling's breathing was stabilizing and her aura was becoming stronger. According to Lu Jiji's memories, Xiang Muling was captured by him 3 years ago using despicable methods. However, her body was too burly and didn't fit the standards of beauty in the Tianxin continent. At the same time, her tyrannical personality and her body that was as tough as a sage artifact made many people with special hobbies stop in their tracks. As a result, the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion had never successfully auctioned her off, and she was always kept in this stone room. However, Lu Jiji was not a kind person. In his eyes, as long as it could not bring him any value, it was all trash. Therefore, Lu Jiji didn't feed Xiang Muling any food in these 3 years. Instead, he would swallow a type of poison every once in a while. It was a form of punishment and also a preventive measure. Of course, what made Yu Haoran feel pity for her and was willing to use the best antidote to save her was only one of the reasons. The real reason was her tragic life. She had no parents and no relatives. She relied on begging and the pity of others to survive her childhood and adolescence. Even after she successfully activated the physique of the war god and obtained the cultivation techniques and martial techniques in her bloodline, she was still bullied and humiliated by others. It wasn't easy for her to obtain the strength to protect herself. However, because of her special physique, she was mocked and looked down on by countless people. It could be said that Xiang Muling's life was filled with blood and tears. It was a tragic life that would make anyone who heard it cry. Although Yu Haoran didn't explain the reason why he took pity on Xiang Muling, considering his cold and heartless personality, the fact that he helped her out of pity was enough to show how pitiful she was. Therefore, Faling didn't continue to persuade Yu Haoran. Instead, he waited with Yu Haoran for her to wake up. After being unconscious for 3 years and being tortured by countless poison pills, Yu Haoran thought that Xiang Muling would need at least 30 minutes to wake up. However, it was obvious that he had underestimated the strength of the war god's physique. Just as he finished recalling Xiang Muling's tragic life, she slowly opened her eyes. Perhaps it was because she had been unconscious for too long. Xiang Muling slowly opened her eyes and revealed a confused expression. However, when she saw Yu Haoran standing in front of her, an instinctive desire made her open her mouth and beg pitifully. "I'm hungry. Can you give me something to eat?" After hearing Xiang Muling's request, Yu Haoran immediately nodded in agreement. At the same time, he indicated for her to wait for a while. After that, he used the 4 laws of light and speed to quickly leave the stone room and the fake mountain. He also used all his divine consciousness to help Xiang Muling find more than 10 delicacies in the shortest time possible. Then he used his extreme speed to bring Qing Ro back to the underground stone room. Yu Haoran ignored the excited Qing Ro and Qing Si, who were reunited with their sisters. He placed all the delicacies he had just obtained in front of Xiang Muling. "Eat, thank you." After looking at the delicacies in front of her, Xiang Muling swallowed her saliva. Her eyes were filled with happiness and gratitude. After expressing her gratitude, she didn't care about her image and squatted on the ground. She grabbed the food and started eating. Seeing that Xiang Muling didn't care about her image at all, Faling, who was in the consciousness space, was completely stunned. He had lived through the ancient era, the middle era, and the modern era. He had seen many monstrous geniuses with the special body constitution of the Einherjar. Even the most unfortunate Einherjar experts weren't as pitiful as Xiang Muling. At this moment, he finally understood why Yu Haoran didn't care about Xiang Muling's selfish character. He also didn't care that she might become an enemy in the future. He also wanted to save her. Seeing that Xiang Yuling was enjoying the delicacies, his eyes were filled with satisfaction and happiness. After seeing that Xiao Jie, Qing Si, and the others used the unsealing elixir to remove the seals in their bodies, Yu Haoran quietly left the stone room and walked to the first stone room on the left. Considering that Fengrun City would be the permanent base of the left army in the future, these stone rooms could be used to store some precious cultivation resources. Therefore, Yu Haoran didn't break the stone door roughly like before. Instead, he reached out and gently pushed the stone door open. Immediately after, an incomparably pure spiritual energy gushed out from the stone door. However, as his cultivation reached the peak of the 10th grade martial honorable realm, and Emperor Wu's strength was at the peak of the 3rd grade martial honorable realm, even the purest spiritual liquid's effect on his cultivation and strength was negligible. Therefore, Yu Haoran ignored the pure spiritual liquid gushing out from the stone room and walked into the stone room. Rows of sealed spirit veins and boxes of spirit stones were placed casually. Just from his point alone, one could see how crazy Lu Jiji had been in human trafficking all these years. At the same time, this further proved the hidden dangers of the Great Han Empire. Apart from the 2 4th-grade spirit veins and 6 5th-grade spirit veins that were stored in the Victor, the remaining spirit veins and spirit stones in the stone room were stored in an empty interspatial ring. They would be used to store resources for the 100,000 elite soldiers of the left army. After leaving the first stone room, Yu Haoran entered the second stone room and stored the hundreds of magic tools in the interspatial ring where the spirit stones and spirit veins were stored. In the third stone room, there were hundreds of different types of pills and pill bottles of different grades. Unfortunately, the highest grade of the pills was only 3rd grade 9th grade. They weren't of much help to him, so he stored them all in the interspatial ring. Chapter 17:15. Fengrun City, the City Lord's Mansion. Inside the 5th stone room, there were dozens of books on mental cultivation techniques and martial techniques, as well as hundreds of jade slips of varying ages. For the time being, he did not have much time to look through the contents of the books and jade slips. Yu Haoran used his divine will to send all the books and jade slips into his sea of consciousness for Thowling to look through and reorganize them. After exiting the 5th stone room, he stepped into the 6th stone room. After looking at the layout of the stone room, Yu Haoran could not help but frown. This was because the 6th stone room also had 13 iron cages made of black iron. 8 of the cages were empty, and 5 of the cages each had a person inside. However, unlike the 7th stone room, the 6th stone room was filled with men who were as soft as jade and as soft as flowers. That's right, they were even softer than a woman's body, and even more seductive than a woman's. Although he knew that some nobles in the Tianxian continent liked men, it was only hearsay. He had never seen it with his own eyes. Now that he had personally witnessed the lustful gazes of the 5 women in the cage and their fingers that were as white as jade, Yu Haoran subconsciously imagined that kind of scene. The nausea in his heart instantly surged, causing him to almost vomit in disgust. Instead of taking pity on the 5 charming men in the cages and saving them, Yu Haoran left the stone room with a slightly panicked expression and closed the stone door on his way out. Closing his eyes, he carefully recalled Qin Ling Fei's gentleness and the tendency of his erection. He could not help but let out a long sigh of relief, because at the same time that he felt nauseous, an impulse to touch the other person's skin appeared in his mind, to see if their skin was smoother and softer than a woman's. Fortunately, he was not turned gay. He was still a straight man. Looking at the 6th stone room with lingering fear, Yu Haoran did not look back. He walked past the 7th stone room and reached out to push open the stone door of the 8th stone room. Woo! Screech! SSS! Just as the door to the 8th stone room was pushed open, 3 deafening roars rang out. Fortunately, both the stone chamber and the space at the end of the passage were made of special materials. Not only were they sturdy and durable, they also had the effect of blocking sound. Therefore, Yu Haoran was not worried that the deafening roar would alarm the people in the City Lord's mansion. After entering the stone room, he discovered that the space of the 8th stone room was far larger than that of the other 7 stone rooms. At the same time, there were a total of 3 huge metal cages placed in the stone room, each containing a huge exotic beast. First level, 5th level Sage Realm Blue-Spotted Fierce Tiger, First level 5th level Sage Realm Sky-Piercing Sparrow, and First level 5th level Sage Realm Black Origin Python. Yuhauran frowned slightly as he looked at the 3 strange beasts trapped in the iron cage. The 3 ordinary beasts in front of him were not suitable for a pet beast contract. So what was Lu Jiji's purpose for imprisoning them? Yuhauran, if I'm not wrong, these 3 exotic beasts should be used as ingredients for cooking. Seeing Yuhauran frown, Thaling made a clever guess. After all, the blue-spot fierce tiger is the best tiger beast for aphrodisiac. The sky-piercing sparrow is known as a living phoenix, and the black origin python is also known as a living dragon. Thaling, I've already used the soul-searching secret technique to check Lu Jiji's memories. If these 3 exotic beasts are used as ingredients for cooking, I won't be suspicious. After shaking his head to deny Thaling's guess, Yuhauran walked in front of the blue-spot fierce tiger and explained the reason for his denial. That's because in Lu Jiji's memories, the 8th and 9th stone rooms were built by the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion's weapon refiner alone. Moreover, no one is allowed to enter the stone rooms, including Lu Jiji himself. Therefore, he doesn't know what the 8th and 9th stone rooms are used for. Since its demonic power and soul power were sealed, although the blue-spot fierce tiger roared in protest, it didn't pose any threat. After using the trapping sword Saint's scabbard to break the iron lock, he stepped into the iron cage and waved his hand to knock out the blue-spot fierce tiger that was pouncing at him. Then he used his divine telekinesis to carefully check its body. When his divine telekinesis found 3 little life forms in its abdomen, a shocking thought flashed through his mind. Yuhauran immediately used his divine telekinesis to check the abdomens of the sky-piercing sparrow and the black origin python. He discovered that they were also giving birth to new life forms. Without any hesitation, he immediately exited the iron cage and the 8th stone room. In a flash, he appeared in the 9th stone room. When he saw 28 milky white beast eggs on the wooden shelves of the 9th stone room, as well as a dozen strangely shaped exotic beast corpses, Yuhauran's face instantly darkened. Were these things? Thaling couldn't help but frown and ask when he saw the dozen or so exotic beast corpses. Not only were their appearances strange and ugly, but their auras were also in a mess. Mixed blood, Yuhauran said with a gloomy face as he walked up to the corpse of an exotic beast with a tiger's head, a snake's body, and a thin tail. Using a specially created pill, a tiger-type exotic beast with an advantage in bloodline can forcefully possess 2, 3, or even a few female exotic beasts. In the end, a mixed-blood exotic beast is born. Good method. Yuhauran's explanation immediately reminded Thaling of the palace, who were also mixed bloods. He was sincerely impressed by the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion's shocking method. After all, as long as they could nurture a mixed-blood exotic beast and sign a beast pet contract with it as soon as it was born, then, as long as they were willing to invest in nurturing it, it wouldn't take long for them to have a terrifyingly powerful helper. Thaling's thoughts were also the main reason why Yuhauran's face was so gloomy. Whether it was in his previous life or in this life, he had never taken the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion, which had a business heritage, seriously. Otherwise, he wouldn't have dared to use his alchemy skills to directly destroy the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion's branch in Xianyang City when he was only a martial master. However, from the situation in the 8th and 9th stone rooms, the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion's hidden methods were far beyond his imagination. Perhaps the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion's true methods and strength had already far surpassed the other 2 chambers of commerce. They might even be on par with the Shang clan and the Zhou clan, which had a heritage from the Middle Ages. It seemed like he had to be more vigilant when facing the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion in the future to prevent himself from being careless and failing miserably. Thinking of this, Yuhauran sent out a dozen powerful palm winds directly destroying all the beast eggs and exotic beast corpses in the stone room before retreating from the ninth stone room. Chapter 17:16. Feng Run City. In the city governor's mansion. According to Liu Jiji's memories, Yu Haoran quietly killed the 5 experts who were qualified to contact the Great Han Empire's imperial family and the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion's upper echelons. However, they were not among his suspected targets. After that, Yu Haoran returned to the rockery in the underground stone chamber. He gently leaped onto the rockery and looked at Feng Run City that was still covered in darkness. He ordered Thaling and his second avatar in his sea of consciousness. Thaling, Brother Ran, I'll have to trouble you. Yu Haoran, if my second avatar and I work together to set up the formation, we'll only need 5 hours at most. Thaling reminded Yu Haoran before he left with his second avatar. Understand? Yu Haoran nodded as he understood what Thaling meant. He immediately mobilized Emperor Wu's Divine Sense, which was at the peak of 5th stage Divine Sense, to inform Lan Rong and Han Guangbei, who were hiding in a dense forest thousands of miles away. He ordered them to immediately lead the army to attack Feng Run City. After that, he stood quietly on top of the rockery, waiting for the 100,000 elite soldiers of the left army to attack Feng Run City. With the help of the flesh and blood essence of the venerable realm blue-bellied whale, almost 90% of the elite soldiers achieved a breakthrough in their cultivation and realm. This also allowed the weakest among the 100,000 elite soldiers to reach the peak of 9th stage Martial Grandmaster. With the help of elixirs and spiritual stones, the peak of 9th stage Martial Grandmaster cultivation could maintain a high-speed flight distance of more than 10,000 miles. Therefore, the left army that used the flying method to rush to Feng Run City only took less than half an hour to reach a position less than 100 miles away from Feng Run City. At this moment, the terrifying aura of 100,000 elite soldiers gathered together had already alerted countless experts of Martial Grandmaster realm and above in the city, as well as the city guards on the southern city wall. Enemy attack! Enemy attack! Enemy attack! The army is coming. Run for your lives. Feng Run City's geographical location was remote, and behind it was the Qinghu mountain range as a natural barrier. Therefore, the city guards never thought that they would be attacked by the army one day. Therefore, when they saw the 100,000 elite soldiers charging at them from outside the city, the thousands of city guards on the city wall either screamed in panic, froze on the spot, and didn't know what to do, or flew into the air to meet the enemy head-on. Looking at the reaction of the city guards, Yu Haoran shook his head in disappointment. However, he could not help but admire Emperor Qin. In order to ensure the combat strength of the city guard army in each city, as well as to strengthen the absolute control of the imperial family, he would transfer 50% to 60% of the city guard army from different cities every year to join the border guard for a period of 3 to 5 years. During the rotation period, the most dangerous and difficult missions were the city guards. This way, not only could it increase the city guard's combat strength, but it could also weaken the strength of the various cities. Yu Shixiang, what's going on? Because the passage to the underground stone room was always open, it lost the effect of blocking sound. The battle between the 100,000 soldiers and the city guards immediately alerted Shao Jie and the others in the 7th stone room. After leaving the 7th stone room hand in hand and passing through the underground passage to the outside of the fake mountain, Shao Jie, who had an extraordinary background, couldn't help but change her expression when she heard the deafening sounds of fighting coming from the southern city gate. She quickly raised her head and asked Yu Haoran, who was on the fake mountain. Junior sister Shao, as a direct descendant of the Shao clan, one of the 4 great clans of the imperial capital, can't you guess? Yu Haoran asked with a light smile as he lowered his head to look at Shao Jie, whose eyes were filled with doubt. Yu Haoran's question made Shao Jie's delicate body tremble. The doubt in her eyes was immediately replaced by shock. Yu Shixiang, whether it is the number of top experts or the overall strength of the empire, our great Han Empire far surpasses your great Emperor Qin Empire. Could it be that your Emperor Qin has gone mad and actually dared to take the initiative to attack our great Han Empire? Junior sister Xiao, the plan to conquer your great Han Empire is Yu Haoran's, own decision. The main general of the expedition is also me. Yu Haoran replied with a smile as he gestured for Xiao Jie to come to the artificial mountain. Junior sister Xiao, based on your experience, is the idea of conquering the great Han Empire too risky? Will the final plan succeed? Yu Xiang, don't you think your question is very funny? After rolling her eyes at Yu Haoran, Xiao Jie pointed at the location of the great Han Empire's capital city and said with an arrogant expression, "Although our great Han Empire's territory is inferior to your Emperor Qin Empire's, the eastern region's spiritual energy and cultivation resources are far superior to the southern regions. The complete inheritance of sex and family forces makes our overall strength at least 10 times stronger than yours, not to mention the number of top experts." At this point, the corner of Xiao Jie's mouth curled up slightly as she mocked with a disdainful expression. Using the great Han Empire as the target of the expedition is undoubtedly like a dragonfly trying to shake a stone pillar. You're overestimating yourself. Junior sister Xiao, why do I feel that the final result of the expedition is that our Emperor Qin Empire will be able to completely replace the great Han Empire? Yu Haoran didn't get angry because of Xiao Jie's mockery. He still had a faint smile on his face as he replied. Yu Haoran's reply was as gentle as a breeze, but Xiao Jie's expression couldn't help but change. This was because she suddenly thought of Foam Run City's city lord, Lu Zhiji. She thought of those nobles who had their own armies and the rotten royal family. The arrogance on her body suddenly disappeared without a trace. However, she had been taught to be loyal and patriotic since she was young. This made her instinctively want to tell the higher-ups of her family in detail about what was happening before her eyes. This would allow her family and the royal family to take precautions in advance and defeat the Emperor Qin Empire's ambition of conquering the eastern region. She could also use this opportunity to sound the alarm for the royal family. However, just as she started to mobilize her origin energy and soul power and was about to use a special secret technique, Yu Haoran's indifferent warning sounded in her ears. Junior sister Xiao, if you still want to smoothly leave Foam Run City and safely return to the Xiao clan in the imperial capital, it's best that you immediately put away those unrealistic thoughts. Otherwise, I don't mind letting you return to the iron cage in the stone room. Yu Haoran's warning and threat made Xiao Jie feel a trace of fear. She obediently stopped using the secret technique, but she didn't blame Yu Haoran for his threat at all. This was because she knew that as the prince consort of the Emperor Qin Empire, he would definitely prioritize the interests of the empire when facing the issue of leading an army into battle. Seeing that Xiao Jie didn't have the slightest bit of resentment and gave up on using the secret technique to contact the higher-ups of her family, Yu Haoran nodded with deep gratification. He then spoke to Qing Si and the other 13 people under the fake mountain. In order to ensure that the army can smoothly occupy Foam Run City and take proper defensive measures, I hope that you can quietly stay in this courtyard for 5 hours. Chapter 17:17 Foam Run City, the City Lord's Mansion. Xiao Jie's heart trembled when she heard that Yu Haoran was giving her the time she wanted. Yu Xiang, do you really only need 5 hours? That's right, just 5 hours. Nodding in confirmation, Yu Haoran leaped into the air and headed straight for the city gate. Looking at Yu Haoran, who quickly left the rockery courtyard, Xiao Jie's eyes revealed a trace of struggle, and her slender fingers also slightly raised. However, when she saw the tunnel leading to the underground stone room, she couldn't help but sigh and put down her raised fingers. Why are you following me? When Yu Haoran rushed to the city gate, he realized that Xiang Muling was following behind him. He had no choice but to stop and ask, "You are good to me, so I will protect you." Xiang Muling replied innocently, "Muling, I don't need your protection." Yu Haoran rejected her with a frown. Xiang Muling was only a first-grade martial king, so she didn't have the ability to protect herself. Furthermore, he didn't need or like the feeling of being protected by a girl. You are good to me, so I will always protect you. In the face of Yu Haoran's rejection, the stubborn Xiang Muling repeated her point of view like a child. Yu Haoran turned around and saw the innocence in Xiang Muling's eyes. He thought about the tragic life she had gone through, and his heart softened. He didn't have the heart to continue rejecting her and could only remind her gently. All right, then take care of yourself. I understand. Xiang Muling nodded happily after receiving Yu Haoran's approval. Yu Haoran sighed when he saw that Xiang Muling was like a child who hadn't grown up yet. He then brought her to Lan Rong and the others. Greetings, Prince Consort. Lan Rong and the other generals immediately knelt down on one knee. Rise. Yu Haoran smiled as he gestured. Immediately after, he put away the smile on his face and ordered with a dignified expression. General Lin, immediately lead the troops and completely seal off Feng Run City. No one is allowed to leave within the next 5 hours. This subordinate obeys. Lin Xiangrong stood up and led nearly 20,000 troops to seal off Feng Run City. General Li, General Yuan, immediately lead your men to exterminate the remaining city guards in the city. This subordinate obeys. Li Quanqing and Ma Enghai responded to the order and rose to their feet as well, leading over 20,000 men to slaughter the fleeing city guards. General Qi, immediately lead our troops to calm the people in the city. This subordinate is proud. Qi Weixian also immediately got up and dispersed nearly 10,000 troops to do the work of pacifying. General An, attack the city lord's mansion. Pointing to the north of the city, Yu Haoran instructed Lan Rong. This subordinate obeys. After getting up, Lan Rong drew the sword that symbolized his identity as a great general and shouted at the remaining 40,000 elite soldiers. Kill! At the same time, the 40,000 elite soldiers took out their natal spiritual artifacts and roared at the top of their lungs. Kill! Accompanied by the deafening roar, the 40,000 elite soldiers rushed toward the city lord's mansion dozens of miles away, like rolling waves. Ignoring the actions of Lan Rong and the others, Yu Haoran chose the tallest tower in the city. He sat cross-legged at the top of the tower and used his divine thought to seal off the area within a radius of 10,000 miles, vigilant against any threats that might appear at any time. At the same time, he continued to use the yin-yang mystical fire to refine the black and white wings to improve his realm and strength. Xiang Muling, who was following closely behind him, stood quietly at the side, looking as if she would not leave even half a step. Palace, who had already completed the assassination mission, had been staying in one of the courtyards in the city lord's mansion to avoid meeting the extremely curious Qing Si. After seeing Yu Haoran, who was sitting cross-legged, he immediately appeared at the top of the tower. Ignoring Xiang Muling, who was standing at the side, he directly sat cross-legged and continued to comprehend the murderous aura in the immortal slaughtering sword while waiting for instructions to act. Since City Lord Li Jiji and most of the martial revered and martial saint experts in the city were killed, the city guards and the family forces immediately fell into chaos. In the face of the well-trained army on the left and the 100,000 elite soldiers filled with murderous intent, the 50,000 city guards and the 100,000 family elites were either killed mercilessly or had their cultivation and strength sealed and thrown into the death prison in just 1 hour. At the same time, under the command of the experienced Lan Rong and a few other generals, the 100,000 elite soldiers quickly took over the important positions and passes in the city. In the shortest time possible, they comforted the people who had taken the opportunity to escape from Feng Run City. Time passed by minute. Feng Run City, which had fallen into chaos, gradually regained its calm. Yu Haoran, who was at the top of the tower, also slowly opened his eyes. In less than 5 hours, Thowling and his second doppelganger had successfully set up the Sun-Moon-Star formation and the attack formation. During this time, they did not encounter any unforeseen circumstances. Yu Haoran, these 2 jade slips contain the methods to control the Sun-Moon-Star formation and the attack formation. You could directly hand them over to Lan Rong and the others later. Thaling, who had returned to the knowledge sea, casually threw out the 2 jade slips and instructed, "Brother Chi, let's go." After receiving the 2 jade slips, Yu Haoran turned his head and signaled to Palace. Then, he went straight to Lan Rong and the others in the city lord's mansion. Looking at the boundless lake and the small islands that were separated by 1,000 meters, Yu Haoran slightly frowned and asked, "Thaling, how can we reach the Snake Beauty's nest?" After successfully occupying Feng Run City, Yu Haoran kept his promise and allowed Xiao Jia and the others to leave Feng Run City. After that, he waited in Feng Run City for another 7 days. Firstly, he needed to wait for Hui Long to successfully refine the first mythical beast corpse and for Thaling to help it collect the other 8 mythical beast corpses. Secondly, he also needed to teach the Great Han Empire a bloody lesson. He needed to let the Great Han Empire's royal family and the Ministry of War know that the occupied Feng Run City had completely changed its name. From now on, it was Yu Haoran's private territory. In 7 days, Feng Run City was attacked by the Great Han Empire a total of 5 times. Among the 5 attacks, 3 of them were from Emperor Wu and the Martial Honorables. However, they were all killed by him and Palace. The other 2 attacks were from the army. However, they were all killed by Lan Rong and the others who led 100,000 elite soldiers and coordinated with the attack formation set up by Thaling. Perhaps it was because of the failure of the 5 attacks that the Great Han Empire knew that Feng Run City was a tough nut to crack. They needed to gather more troops. Chapter 17-18. Since Feng Run City would not be in any danger for the time being, Yu Haoran quietly left Feng Run City with Palace and rushed to the Crouching Dragon Lake, where the Snake Bell clan resided. What was his purpose? It was to fulfill his promise to the sisters, Ru Yin and Ru Yun. Yu Haoran, based on my personal understanding of the Snake Bell clan and the information revealed by the 3 little girls, I don't think you need to enter the Snake Bell clan's lair at all. Thaling, who already had a plan in mind, suggested in the face of Yu Haoran's interrogation. You only need to attack them and force them out of their lair. Then, you can intimidate them into handing over Ru Yin and Ru Yun. That works too. Considering that the Snake Bell clan was also a mysterious clan from ancient times, it was too risky to barge into their lair without knowing their true background in detail. Therefore, in the face of Thaling's suggestion, Yu Haoran nodded in agreement without any hesitation. He then turned his head and instructed Palace, "Brother Chi, please wait for a moment." Then, he flew directly to the center of the Crouching Dragon Lake and activated the ancestral witch's physical body that was close to 5,000 meters long. He also took out the ultimate venerable realm staff weapon. "Enlarge it for me." At the same time, Yu Haoran directly threw the white stick into the air, instructing the tool spirit of the stick magic tool. The white staff that was originally only 2 meters long quickly turned into a giant pillar that was 7,000 meters long under the weapon spirit's control. It extended 2 gigantic palms that were like mountains and held one end of the staff tightly while smashing the other end into the lake. Boom! Accompanied by a deafening roar, the surface of the lake that was smashed by the staff immediately stirred up huge waves that were close to 1,000 meters tall. At the same time, the force formed by the staff and the lake's surface quickly penetrated the obstacles in the lake and reached the bottom of the lake. Who dares to behave atrociously on the Crouching Dragon Lake? Just as the force formed by the staff penetrated the bottom of the lake, a dignified voice suddenly came from a group of magnificent palaces. Accompanied by the dignified voice, a male snake bell with a naked upper body and long purple hair with a human body and a snake tail appeared above the palace. Immediately after, 3 male snake beauties with green and blue hair appeared above the palace, each emitting a powerful aura. Jiang Zihui, Jiang Xinhong, Zhao Jinglin, come with me immediately to kill that human powerhouse. The purple-haired snake beauty ordered with a gloomy expression as her powerful divine sense locked onto the giant that was waving the white pillar and continuing to smash it towards the lake. Yes, Elder Yujun. The two green-haired snake beauties and the blue-haired snake beauties respectfully acknowledged the order. They waved their long snake tails and quickly rushed to the surface of the lake. Yu Haoran, a peak third-stage martial emperor, and 3 early-stage martial emperors are here. Just as Yu Haoran was about to continue smashing the white pillar into the lake, Thaling's voice in his sea of consciousness reminded him. As he quickly put away the white pillar, Yu Haoran immediately returned to his original appearance. Then he quietly floated in the air and looked at the lake. "Brat, who are you? Do you know where this place is?" Yu Haoran, who had transformed into the ancestral witch's body, broke through the limit of the martial honorable realm and reached the height of 5,000 meters, which was Emperor Wu's realm. While the 5,000-meter-tall giant created a strong visual impact, it also caused others to automatically overlook his own cultivation. Therefore, Yu Jun, who had rushed out of the lake with his 3 subordinates, discovered that the young man who had returned to his human form was only a peak 9th grade martial honorable. His cautious expression was immediately replaced by arrogance, and his tone was incomparably domineering as he shouted, "You don't have the qualifications to know who I am. You only need to immediately hand over Ru Yin and Ru Yun. Otherwise, I will definitely scatter your soul and turn your tribe into a river of blood." Since he had decided to use offensive methods to force the snake Bellew out of her nest, he had never thought of using peaceful means to solve the problem. Therefore, Yu Haoran, who had taken out the celestial trapping sword, also sternly threatened the purple-haired snake Bellew. "You are the friend of those 2 lowly servants." Hearing Yu Haoran's threat mention Ru Yin and Ru Yun, Yu Jun's expression suddenly changed. At the same time, a strong killing intent surged from his body. The 3-headed snake Bellew behind him also looked at Yu Haoran with killing intent. "Little snake, since Ru Yin and Ru Yun are my friends, their statuses are naturally much nobler than yours. So watch your tone. Otherwise, be careful that I will break your teeth and cut off your tongue." Hearing the purple-haired snake Bellew's humiliation of Ru Yin and Ru Yun, Yu Haoran's expression instantly darkened as he threatened. He had already learned from the 3 snake Bellew about Ru Yin and Ru Yun's encounter, as well as the dangerous situation they were currently in. This was also the main reason why he chose to confront them with a tough attitude. "Brat, even an almighty expert like Emperor Wu of your human inherited family wouldn't dare to speak to me like that. You're just a mere martial saint." After mocking him in disdain, Yu Jun turned his head and ordered his 3 subordinates. "Capture him alive. I want to break his teeth one by one and cut off his tongue one by one. I want to let him know the consequences of offending me." "Yu Jun, yes, Elder Yu Jun." After cupping their hands in response, the 2 green-haired snake Bellew and the blue-haired snake Bellew immediately spread out. Then, in a triangular formation, they directly sealed off all of his escape routes. In response, Yu Haoran's eyes flashed with a trace of disdain. After flashing the power of law, he instantly appeared in front of one of the green-haired snake Bellew. Under the snake Bellew's incredulous gaze, the celestial trapping sword in his hand directly cut off his head. Then his right hand clenched tightly into a fist, directly smashing the head and the soul in his knowledge sea into pieces. Damn it! In just a single exchange, his brother who had gone through fire and water with him for nearly 1,000 years was killed. This caused the other green-haired snake Bellew to immediately fall into a state of rage. However, just as he was about to fight to the death with Yu Haoran, he suddenly felt a pain in his chest. He lowered his head and saw a sword with a scabbard slowly being drawn out. Just as he was about to launch a counterattack with a snake tail, a huge fist smashed his head and completely destroyed his divine soul in his sea of consciousness. In less than a second, Yu Haoran had consecutively killed 2 of his subordinates, who had just entered the martial emperor realm. This caused Yu Jun's expression to change. Chapter 1719. Crouching Dragon Lake, Midair. Zhao Jinglin immediately used the Bloodline's forbidden secret technique death gaze. With the potential of a top genius and the ability to challenge those of a higher level, Yu Haoran's means were not what Yuan Shijun was most worried about. What really made him fearful now was the sword with the scabbard in the other party's hand, which vaguely gave him an extremely dangerous feeling. With the snake's insidious and selfish nature, Yuan Shijun intended to expend nearly half of his subordinate's life to use the Bloodline's forbidden secret technique to test the true power of the scabbard sword and decide what to do next. After hearing Yuan Shijun's order, the blue-haired snake beauty, Zhao Jinglin's eyes flashed with a trace of fear, but when she thought of Yuan Shijun's inhumane and cruel means, the fear in her eyes was instantly replaced by determination. Then, Zhao Jinglin slowly closed her eyes, and a strange aura quickly rose from her body. Whether it was the dual power of the law of speed or the dual power of the law of flash, they could all allow Yu Haoran to interrupt the forbidden secret technique that the other party was using. But he did not do so. This was because he wanted to see for himself just how powerful the forbidden secret technique, death condensation, was. It was said that anyone who touched it would die, and anyone who touched it would die. After all, the death condensation in the fish-snake bloodline inheritance was ranked 9th among the top 10 secret techniques in the Tianxian continent. While activating the ancestral sorcerer's physical defense, he mobilized the Rui Bell that had not been used for a long time. After forming a double defense, Thaling agreed to try the forbidden secret technique, death condensation, and set up a defensive formation on his body. Just as Yu Haoran prepared the strongest 3 layers of defense, Zhao Jinglin suddenly opened her eyes. Death condensation, accompanied by Zhao Jinglin's violent roar, 2 terrifying gazes directly crossed the distance of time and space and instantly blasted on the defensive formation set up by Thaling. 1 second. The defensive formation set up by Thaling only lasted for 1 second before it was torn apart by the 2 special gazes formed by the forbidden secret technique, death condensation, and then heavily blasted on the Rui Bell. This is because the Wishful Bell was an artifact that had been refined by the soul. When the Wishful Bell was bombarded by the forbidden mystic technique, the laws of life and death that the soul had comprehended and controlled suddenly began to boil. As he grew stronger, Yu Haoran's understanding of the laws of life and death deepened. With his current control and understanding of the laws of life and death, he could easily fuse them into his body and soul, allowing his cultivation to reach Emperor Wu's level. However, under the influence of the forbidden secret technique, Death's Gaze, he suddenly discovered that not only had he lost control of the laws of life and death, but the laws of life and death were also undergoing some sort of transformation. This made him panic, and he hurriedly sought help from Thaling. A heaven-defying opportunity. After hearing Yu Haoran's description of the changes in the laws of life and death, Thaling couldn't help but exclaim in surprise and hurriedly reminded him. Yu Haoran, it's not convenient to explain the current situation in detail, but I can tell you that the changes in the laws of life and death are a good thing. It's a heaven-defying opportunity that can help you break through to the martial god realm as soon as possible. After hearing Thaling's brief reminder, Yu Haoran's panic was quickly replaced by surprise. He immediately removed the defense of the Wishful Bell so that the death condensation could bring more transformation energy to the laws of life and death. Unfortunately, Zhao Jinglin was limited by his grade and bloodline purity, so the forbidden secret technique, death condensation, could only last for a short time. It only lasted for 5 seconds. After 5 seconds, Zhao Jinglin closed his eyes again. His long blue hair was instantly replaced by white hair, and his originally vigorous life aura also fell to the twilight of his life. The moment Zhao Jinglin closed his eyes, the surging laws of life and death quickly calmed down, allowing Yu Haoran to regain control over the laws of life and death. However, he didn't like the feeling of being in control right now, so he flashed the laws of life and instantly appeared in front of Zhao Jinglin. After destroying Zhao Jinglin's soul with a punch, he cast a sharp gaze at Ma Yingjun, hoping that the stronger Ma Yingjun could also use the forbidden secret technique, death condensation. Not only was the forbidden secret technique passed down in the Snake Beauty's bloodline unable to force his opponent to use the sword with the scabbard, but it also didn't give him any pressure at all. This caused Ma Yingjun to immediately panic. In particular, when he saw Yu Haoran's sharp gaze, the thought of retreating surged in his heart, causing him to immediately turn around and charge towards the lake. Boom! However, when he was 3 or 4 meters away from the lake, a huge fist quickly flew over, directly sending him into the air again. The dual laws of life and death allowed Yu Haoran to instantly appear in front of the unconscious Ma Yingjun. The seals formed by his 10 fingers immediately sealed Ma Yingjun's soul, completely capturing him alive. After sending Ma Yingjun flying, Palace tightly gripped the hilt of the immortal slaughtering sword with his left hand and asked murderously, "Brother Yu, should we kill our way into the enemy's lair? Brother Qi, don't panic." While shaking his head and rejecting Palace's suggestion, Yu Haoran took out a strand of Ma Yingjun's long purple hair and a drop of fresh blood that emitted rich spiritual energy. His 10 fingers quickly formed seals. When the 7 seals formed fused with the purple hair and fresh blood, the purple hair and fresh blood quickly condensed into Ma Yingjun's appearance. He stretched out his finger and pointed at Ma Yingjun's forehead, leaving behind a provocative and humiliating sentence. The purple hair and fresh blood condensed into Ma Yingjun instantly disappeared on the spot. In less than 30 seconds, a powerful and terrifying aura quickly emerged from the bottom of the crouching dragon lake. After sensing a powerful aura that far surpassed his own, Palace, who was standing on the lake's surface, had a slight change in expression. Then, he quickly rose into the air and came to Yu Haoran's side. 1 Emperor Wu peak 7th stage, 2 Emperor Wu early 6th stage, and 11 Emperor Wu peak 3rd stage Snake Beauties. After quickly scanning the bottom of the lake with his divine telekinesis, Thowling introduced in detail the number and strength of the opponents that they would have to face next. As long as no demigod-level false gods appeared, Yu Haoran wasn't worried at all, even if it was Emperor Wu peak 9th stage Mighty Expert. Therefore, after hearing Thowling's introduction, he looked at the lake with a calm expression. "Young man, please let go of Ma Yingjun." Among the 14 snake beauties that quickly rushed out of the lake, an old man who had the same long purple hair as Ma Yingjun and whose cultivation had reached Emperor Wu peak 7th stage cultivation requested in a relatively polite manner. "Senior, there's no problem in letting him go. However, you have to let go of my 2 friends first." Chapter 17:20. On the crouching dragon lake. Controlling Ma Yingjun's body to float in front of him, Yu Haoran replied to the other party in a polite tone, but the attitude of the request was unquestionable. "Young man, I wonder who your 2 friends are?" Thinking of the hundreds of human experts in the water dungeon who had been cheated of all their value, the purple-haired old man already had the idea of agreeing to the exchange. After all, as a top expert at the peak of level 7 realm, Emperor Wu could feel a trace of dangerous aura from the 2 swords with scabbards. Under the background of today's unpredictable situation, it was best to avoid provoking some potential dangers. Miss Ruin and Miss Ruyun. Staring into the purple-haired old man's eyes, Yu Haoran said word by word. Boom! Just as Yu Haoran said the names of Ruin and Ruyun, 14 powerful and terrifying auras immediately appeared on the surface of the lake. The 14 snake beauties looked at him with incomparably strong, murderous intent. "Young man, what is your relationship with those 2 bitches?" Forcibly suppressing the urge to attack, the purple-haired old man gritted his teeth and asked, "Friends." Knowing the reason why the other party was so angry after hearing the names of Ruin and Ruyun, Yu Haoran still replied without the slightest fear. "If that's the case, then you can accompany those 2 bitches to die." The moment he received Yu Haoran's reply, the purple-haired old man who couldn't suppress the boiling murderous intent in his heart roared and quickly rushed over. "Brother Yu, I will temporarily delay that old man. You hurry up and finish off the other snake beauties, then we will join hands to kill him." Seeing the 14 snake beauties rushing over, Pallas unsheathed the kill immortal sword from the scabbard and suggested to Yuhauran. Got it. Without the assistance of Thaling and Chuolong, Pallas's strength was far more powerful than his. Since he temporarily delayed the purple-haired old man who was the strongest, it was the most feasible way. Therefore, Yuhauran, who also unsheathed the immortal trapping sword, responded to Pallas's suggestion and directly rushed towards the snake beauties. Exterminate. With the assistance of Flash's dual-elemental power of law, Yuhauran instantly appeared in front of an Emperor Wu's early-stage level 6 snake beauty. The sword chi formed by the combination of the immortal trapping sword and the sword of universal massacre had reached the level of Emperor Wu's early 7th level cultivation. The sword chi destroyed the opponent's body, mind, and spirit. Exterminate. With the assistance of the power of law of speed and speed, he instantly appeared in front of another Emperor Wu 6th grade snake beauty. Using the same sword moves and attacks, he strangled the powerful snake beauty at the same time. With the death of the 2 Emperor Wu grade 6 snake beauties, the remaining 11 grade 3 Emperor Wu grade 6 snake beauties were no longer a threat and were easily killed by Yuhauran with the immortal trapping sword. Then, he overdrew a part of his ancestral wizard bloodline and raised the power of the immortal trapping sword to the level of Emperor Wu grade 7 peak. Then, he rushed towards the purple-haired old man at the level of Emperor Wu grade 7 peak with a murderous look. After the sublimation of his state of mind, although Pallas's strength had been improved, he was still at a disadvantage when facing the purple-haired old man whose grade and strength had reached the level of Emperor Wu grade 7 peak. Fortunately, with his strong physical defense and the sword chi of the immortal slaying sword, although he was at a disadvantage, there was no danger to his life. When Yuhauran, who overdrew a part of his ancestral wizard bloodline and was able to exert the sword chi of Emperor Wu grade 7 peak, rushed forward, the situation of being beaten was instantly reversed, and the purple-haired old man was immediately in a precarious situation. Bo! When Yuhauran used the heaven-destroying sword style of the Heaven and Earth Massacre swordplay to cut off a few strands of the purple-haired old man's hair and cut his cheek, the purple-haired old man immediately used a move that would injure both of them and force back the joint attack of Yuhauran and Pallas. Then, he let out a special roar towards the lake. After the roar, the purple-haired old man slowly closed his eyes. "Brother Chi, let me do it." Feeling the familiar aura emerging from the purple-haired old man, Yuhauran directly stood in front of Pallas. With a hint of excitement, he was ready to receive the secret skill that the purple-haired old man had carefully prepared. The purple-haired old man suddenly opened his eyes and shot out 2 strange lights from his eyes. The 2 lights that crossed the distance of space and time instantly merged into Yuhauran's body. Feeling the power of the law of life and death boiling more violently, Yuhauran forcibly suppressed the surging joy in his heart and pretended to be in pain to avoid arousing the purple-haired old man's suspicion and ended the secret skill of death condensation prematurely. At the same time, his consciousness asked Thaling in his knowledge sea, "Thaling, how many times do I have to endure the secret skill of death condensation before the law of life and death can complete the final transformation?" "I don't know." In the face of Yuhauran's expectant questioning, Thaling shook his head and reminded him, "Whether it's the law of life and death or the forbidden secret skill of death condensation, I only have a little understanding of it in the past. I'm not very proficient in it, so you have to understand and experience it yourself." Thaling's reminder made Yuhauran immediately stop pretending to be in pain. Then, he slowly closed his eyes and carefully experienced the boiling law of life and death. The life aura skyrocketed and the death aura fell. The life aura fell and the death aura skyrocketed. When the life aura skyrocketed to the limit, it gave birth to a trace of death aura. And when the death aura fell to the limit, it gave birth to a trace of life aura. Through careful observation and experience, Yu Haoran felt as if he had sensed a trace of the true essence of life and a trace of the mysteries of death from the boiling law of life and death. Looking at Yu Haoran, whose eyes were tightly shut and who had a serene expression and a smile on his face from time to time, the purple-haired old man, who had overdrawn several thousand years of his lifespan to use the forbidden secret skill of death condensation, was so depressed that he almost vomited blood. Fortunately, his powerful state of mind allowed him to quickly dispel the depression in his heart, and by slowly closing his eyes, he forcibly cut off the use of the secret skill of death condensation. As a result, he naturally suffered from the backlash of the secret skill. After losing the forbidden secret skill of death condensation, the boiling law of life and death calmed down again, and Yu Haoran lost the opportunity to continue comprehending the true essence of life and the mysteries of death. He did not mind this at all and opened his eyes. When he looked at the purple-haired old man, a trace of greed appeared in his eyes. Chapter 17:21. On the crouching dragon lake, Yu Haoran immediately appeared in front of the purple-haired old man, whose strength had dropped to the level of Emperor Wu's at the beginning of the third stage because he had overdrawn half of his life force and suffered a backlash from the forbidden secret technique. The celestial trapping sword, which had just returned to its scabbard, was drawn out again. Under the dumbfounded gaze of the purple-haired old man, his head was directly chopped off. As he motioned for Thaling to put away the purple-haired old man's headless corpse, he punched the purple-haired old man's head and spirit. Thaling, the blood essence in the snake beauty's body, can accelerate the transformation of the power of the laws of life and death. It can also help me understand the true essence of the law of life and the mystery of the law of death. While sheathing the sword, Yu Haoran explained in detail to Thaling in his sea of consciousness why he had asked him to put away the purple-haired old man's headless corpse. Yu Haoran, are you sure? After hearing Yu Haoran's explanation, Thaling, who was sitting cross-legged in the sea of consciousness, suddenly stood up and asked with a rather excited expression, "The limit of life gives birth to the way of death, and the limit of death contains a trace of life force." Without explaining too much, Yu Haoran only told Thaling what he had just comprehended. Yu Haoran, put aside the matter of rescuing the two girls for the time being. Next, you have to do your best to kill and collect the blood essence of the snake beauty. Yu Haoran told Thaling what he had just comprehended. This allowed Thaling, who had the comprehension of a peak supreme, to be very clear about the true essence of the law of life and the mystery of the law of death, as well as the true meaning they represented. Therefore, Thaling, who was extremely excited in his heart, made his request with an unquestionable attitude. Saving people and the blood essence are equally important. Although Thaling's unquestionable request was for his own good, Yu Haoran would still adhere to his own principles in certain matters. Okay. Thaling took a deep breath and forcibly suppressed the excitement in his heart. While respecting Yu Haoran's choice, he immediately mobilized his third tribulation demigod divine thought, intending to forcefully search the nest of the snake beauty to see if the number of snake beauty could satisfy Yu Haoran's need for the blood essence to advance the power of law. However, just as his divine thought extended 10 meters to the bottom of the lake, nearly 100 powerful auras were rushing toward the surface of the lake. Thinking, Thaling knew that he must have used a secret method to contact with the same clan, gathering experts of the clan to gather the experts of the clan to come for revenge. Among the 100 auras of powerful demigods, Thaling demigod divine thought, Thaling of quickly demigod divine thought, and suggested demonic body demonic body, and quickly suggested as suggested the secrets divine secret demonic demigod possession. Yu Haoran nodded in agreement without any hesitation when he heard that the strongest of the Snake Beauty's clan, the three-headed Snake Beauty, had reached the first tribulation demigod realm. Just as Thaling performed the demonic demigod possession's secret demonic demigod possession, the surface of the lake, which had just calmed down, was stirred up by waves of powerful auras one after another. Howren and Pallas had no choice but to continue rising into the air for a distance. "Brat, how dare you kill my Snake Beauty's clansmen? I think you're tired of living." Following the countless waves that were stirred up on the surface of the lake, a shrill and ear-piercing voice sounded from the highest wave. Accompanied by the shrill and ear-piercing voice, a female snake beauty with unparalleled beauty, a graceful figure, and long dark purple hair appeared on the surface of the lake, exuding an alluring aura. "I don't know if you're tired of living, but if you don't hand over my two friends immediately, then this day next year will be the death anniversary of your entire Snake Beauty's clan." Ignoring the enchanting aura emitted by the other party, Howren, who was holding the immortal trapping sword tightly, retorted with a sharp tone. "Wang Shui, go and capture that sharp-toothed brat for this queen. This queen will let him know the consequences of offending our Snake Beauty." Howren was not the slightest bit tempted by her own alluring aura. A cold glint flashed through the eyes of the Snake Beauty with dark purple hair. Then, she turned her head and ordered a female Snake Beauty whose cultivation had reached the peak of the 8th stage of Emperor Wu. "Yes, Imperial Concubine." Wang Shui's respectful voice had just fallen when her snake tail, emitting an eerie cold light, had already whipped in front of Howren. In response, Howren did not panic in the slightest. Using the power of the law of speed, he quickly retreated. At the same time, a 9-color dragon rushed out from his chest with a roar. When she saw the 9-color dragon, the eyes of the Imperial Concubine Snake Beauty, whose snake tail was erected on the surface of the lake, flashed a look of reminiscence. "Roar!" The 9-color dragon that rushed out from Howren's chest let out an incomparably pure dragon roar at Wang Shui. It was merely a sound wave formed from a pure dragon roar, but it directly shattered Wang Shui's snake tail. This also caused a trace of pain to flash across Wang Shui's beautiful face. "Destroy!" After the roar, the Hui dragon looked at Wang Shui indifferently. It opened its mouth slightly and uttered the word destroy. After the special power formed by the word destroy swept past Wang Shui, she slowly closed her eyes. The instant loss of her life force caused her to directly fall from the clouds. However, just as she fell more than 10 meters in the clouds, she was directly swept away by a strange power. Damn it! Seeing that Emperor Wu's confidant, whose cultivation had reached the peak of the 8th stage, was killed by the 9-color dragon in a single exchange, the Imperial Concubine Snake Beauty, who was no longer in the mood to continue recalling the origin of the dragon, cursed inwardly. She then turned her head and ordered her 2 First Tribulation demigod subordinates behind her. "Jiang Jinjun, Jiang Hongwei, kill them immediately." "Yes, Imperial Concubine." After respectfully accepting the order like Wang Shui, the 2 First Tribulation demigod snake beauties instantly appeared in front of Howren. However, when facing the 2 First Tribulation demigods that suddenly appeared in front of him, Howren, whose temperament had already been replaced by the vicissitudes of life, did not reveal the slightest bit of panic. Instead, he grinned at the 2 snake beauties. Not good. As First Tribulation demigods, their sensitivity to dangerous auras was far stronger than experts like Emperor Wu. They felt a strong and fatal threat from Howren, whose temperament had suddenly changed. After secretly cursing, the 2 First Tribulation demigod snake beauties planned to withdraw and retreat. However, Howren, who was grinning, directly drew out the celestial trapping sword. "Sword come, sword go." Accompanied by Howren's calm shout, the celestial trapping sword shot out a sword aura that was not very sharp. It instantly caught up with the 2 First Tribulation demigod snake beauties. Then, the sword aura automatically split into 2 gentle sword lights that crossed the barriers of time and space, respectively piercing into the eyebrows of the 2 snake beauties. Chapter 1722. On the Crouching Dragon Lake. In the same encounter, a seemingly ordinary sword technique had taken away two of the clan's top false god experts. This made the snake beauty, who was called the Imperial Concubine, gasp. At the same time, the eyes of the 100-headed snake beauty behind her were filled with fear. Little salamander, you also know that the bloodline essence of the snake beauty's inheritance has a heaven-defying effect on your master. So there are some things that I don't need to tell you too much. Ignoring the fearful eyes of the snake beauties, Thaling, who was controlling Yuhauran's body, reminded the Hui dragon, who was quietly floating in the clouds. Roar! Nodding its massive dragon head, the Hui dragon let out a deafening roar towards the sky, before charging straight towards the 100-headed snake beauty standing on the surface of the lake. At the same time, Thaling also waved the unsheathed immortal trapping sword and charged toward the snake beauty, who was the strongest on the lake. Kill! Seeing Yuhauran, whose body was controlled by Thaling, and the 9-color dragon, who brought him infinite pressure, all of them charged toward the snake beauty floating on the lake. The blood in Pallas's body was gradually boiling. After a roar, he drew the immortal slaying sword and charged toward the dozen snake beauties below the 7th stage realm of Emperor Wu. Boom! After only one exchange, the snake beauty, who had retreated dozens of steps, had a look of horror in her eyes. She immediately wanted to retreat and return to the palace at the bottom of the lake. Because in the exchange, just now, not only did she use the most powerful secret technique of her bloodline inheritance, but she also used a Divine Realm clan treasure. And the result, the Divine Realm treasure was directly cut in half by the opponent's sword chi, which forced her to retreat and at the same time caused her to suffer a certain degree of injury. The snake beauty was a snake that acted decisively. Since she already had the thought of retreating in her heart, she did not hesitate to dive to the bottom of the lake. Even if you are a true Divine Realm expert, you can forget about escaping from me, purple spirit, let alone a false god of the first tribulation demigod realm. Thaling sneered in disdain when he saw the Imperial Concubine trying to escape into the lake. He then waved his immortal trapping sword. An unimaginably sharp sword chi slashed open a vacuum fissure that was thousands of meters deep on the surface of the lake. This caused the snake concubine, who had just touched the lake water, to be instantly replaced by fear. Just as the sharp sword chi that split the lake water was about to kill the snake consort, a terrifying water arrow that caused the souls of countless creatures to tremble shot out from the palace at the bottom of the lake. It directly destroyed the sharp sword chi and also saved the snake consort, who had already closed her eyes and waited for death. A fully awakened, godly state expert. Thaling muttered to himself with a gloomy expression as he looked at the water arrow that Annihilation used the immortal trapping sword's origin energy. At the same time, the 9-color dragon and palace immediately gave up on pursuing the remaining snake beauties and quickly returned to Thaling's side. Friend, for the sake of this emperor, can you spare my clansmen? Just as Thaling pointed out the opponent's cultivation level, a relatively polite tone of discussion came from the palace at the bottom of the lake. Thaling, you can stop, but you have to agree to 3 of my requests. Yuhauran knew that the godly state expert of the Snake Beauty clan had personally taken action. He was afraid that his plan to continue collecting enough Snake Beauty blood essence would have to be put on hold for the time being. Thinking of the rules set by the 4 great guardian families, the 5 great hidden inherited families, and the 7 great sects, he knew that the Snake Beauty god expert who had already violated the rules would definitely not dare to continue attacking. Otherwise, violating the rules set by the 16 top forces would be the same as openly provoking them. No force in the Tianxian continent could withstand the combined revenge of the 16 top forces. Therefore, even though he knew that the other party was an immortal with earth-shattering power, Yuhauran still planned to ruthlessly cut off a piece of flesh from the other party before leaving Crouching Dragon Lake. I can spare your clansmen, but you have to agree to 3 of my requests. Thaling, who knew that he was not good at negotiations, immediately handed over control of his physical body and allowed Yu Haoran to personally negotiate with the other party. However, considering that the other party was a godly state divine beast, even if it used its origin source, it could possibly severely injure Yu Haoran. Therefore, even though he had handed over control of his physical body, Fowling Soul did not leave his physical body. This was so that if Yu Haoran was in danger, he would be able to lend a hand immediately. Please speak. Although Yu Haoran's temperament had changed from a sea of mulberry fields to a young and delicate one, the attitude of the godly state expert in the depths of the palace at the bottom of the lake did not change at all. First, immediately release Ruyun and Ruyun. Since he had the confidence that the other party would not dare to act rashly, Yu Haoran's attitude, when he put forward his requests, was very firm. No problem. Although the crimes committed by Ruyun and Ruyun made them unforgivable sinners, compared to the survival of the tribe, it was acceptable to hand over the two sinners who had completely turned into trash. Therefore, the godly state expert in the palace at the bottom of the lake agreed readily. Second, 5 drops of heart-devouring cold marrow venom of the peak 9th grade martial emperor realm. Yu Haoran was not surprised that the other party would agree to his first request so readily. Then, he raised his second request. The heart-devouring cold marrow venom was a type of venom specially cultivated from the snake beauty's poisonous fangs. Although it did not enter the ranking of the 100 poisons in Tianxian continent, the power of the venom was not inferior to that of the soul-devouring spirit. Out of the 5 drops of heart-devouring cold marrow venom, 1 drop would be used to refine a poisonous pill that could harm a demigod. The other 4 drops would be given to his 2 disciples so that they could use the venom contained in the heart-devouring cold marrow venom to improve their cultivation in the poison Tao. Faced with Yu Haoran's second request, the godly state expert in the palace at the bottom of the lake thought for a while and finally nodded in agreement. Sure, Yu Haoran was not surprised that the other party could agree to the second request that seemed a little overboard. He continued to raise his third request. The third request is 13 types of level 2 grade 9 medicinal herbs. They are the fire spiritual herb, blood spiritual herb, Fireheart 7-leaf flower, heartbreaking fruit. No problem. For a tribe that had been passed down from the ancient times, the snake beauty had accumulated countless precious and rare herbs due to their special survival habits and their lack of experience in experiencing great changes. Not to mention 13 types of second-tier, 9th-grade exotic flowers and herbs. Even if it was 13 types of first-tier, first-grade divine herbs, it wasn't like they couldn't take it out. Chapter 1723. On the Crouching Dragon Lake. After getting the other party's agreement, Yu Haoran took the initiative to put away the Nightmare Dragon and the Celestial Trapping Sword to show his sincerity. After seeing Yu Haoran's sincerity in taking the initiative to stop, the godly state expert in the palace at the bottom of the lake ordered his clansmen to prepare the request he had just agreed to. He mentioned the poison and exotic flowers, as well as the sisters Ruyin and Ruyun. At the same time, he signaled the remaining 30-plus snake beauties on the lake to quickly return to the palace at the bottom of the lake. Looking at the dozens of snake beauties floating on the lake's surface, the godly state expert in the palace at the bottom of the lake couldn't help but sigh softly. This was because most of these corpses were venerable state and emperor state experts. They were direct descendants of the clan that had been carefully cultivated for thousands or even tens of thousands of years. After sighing softly, the godly state expert planned to bury all of them in the snake beauty's ancestral land. When their souls could return to the arms of their ancestors, Fowling, who had quickly returned to the space of the sea of consciousness, immediately mobilized the origin energy of the victor and forcibly took away all of the snake beauty's corpses. Even a godly state expert like himself couldn't stop the power of the corpses of his clansmen from being taken away. While the expert in the palace at the bottom of the lake was shocked, he immediately rejoiced at his decision to take a step back. Otherwise, with the other party's strength that wasn't inferior to the martial god state. Not only could he turn the entire clan upside down, but he could also possibly discover the plan that they had secretly planned for countless years. The preparation time wasn't very long. Just as Thowling used the victor to take away all of the snake beauties' corpses, 3 venerable state female snake beauties escorted the sisters Ru-In and Ru-Yun to the surface of the lake. Ru-In and Ru-Yun, who had originally thought that they were going to be executed, had a desolate look in their eyes. However, when they saw the blue-clothed youth floating in the air and saw the faint, confident smile on his face, their eyes immediately lit up with joy. In a flash, he appeared in front of Ru-In and Ru-Yun. After taking the storage ring from one of the snake beauties, Yuhaoran stretched out his hands to hold the sisters' waists and soared into the air to leave the crouching dragon lake. Third granduncle, you're about to fully awaken. Why didn't you directly kill the human monster? Instead, you took the initiative to step back and humiliated yourself by agreeing to his request. After Yuhaoran left Crouching Dragon Lake with Ru-In and Ru-Yun, a third tribulation demigod snake beauty with long purple hair bent his body slightly and asked into the depths of the palace. Xiao Qian, as the ruler of the race, your responsibility is to lead the entire race to become stronger, not just focus on your own cultivation. Faced with the long purple hair snake beauty's interrogation, the godly realm expert in the depths of the palace criticized with a serious tone. Third granduncle, Xian Qian, knows his mistake. I will pay attention in the future. Faced with her third granduncle's criticism, the snake beauty called Little Qian immediately lowered her head and admitted her mistake. However, a trace of disdain flashed in his eyes, indicating that he did not take the other party's criticism to heart. Xiao Qian, first of all, I haven't fully recovered. Right now, I can barely unleash the strength of a peak third tribulation demigod. Seeing that Xian Qian had already realized his mistake, the third granduncle nodded in satisfaction before explaining why he had chosen to step back earlier. Secondly, if I were to forcefully take action now, I would definitely alarm the Vermilion Bird clan of the 4 Guardian clans and the Heat clan of the Hidden Lineage clan. With the strength that we have accumulated now, we are temporarily unable to withstand the revenge of the 2 lineage clans. Lastly, speaking to this point, the third granduncle looked in the direction that Yuhaoran had disappeared in through the water of Crouching Dragon Lake and said with a trace of fear in his voice, "There is an extremely terrifying power hidden in that young man's sea of consciousness. I think that even if he recovers the strength of a peak third stage godly realm, he might not be a match for that power." After hearing his third granduncle's explanation, a trace of surprise flashed across Xian Qian's eyes as he lowered his head. At the peak of a mountain thousands of miles away from Crouching Dragon Lake, Ru-Yun was leaning on a green rock. Her eyes were filled with excitement, rejoicing, regret, helplessness, inferiority, and other complex emotions as she looked at Yuhaoran. As for Ru-In, after experiencing the joy of surviving a calamity, she had once again sunk into a state of utter despair due to her terrible condition. Senior Ru-In, Senior Ru-Yun, don't worry too much. I have a way to let you return to your peak state. Seeing the dejected Ru-In and the complicated Ru-Yun, Yuhaoran knew how they were feeling at the moment and smiled as he comforted them. Young hero Yu, thank you for saving our lives. Yuhaoran's consolation caused Ru-Yun to quickly calm down from her complicated emotions. She extended her hand to pick up a few strands of hair that had fallen in front of her forehead. She solemnly thanked Yuhaoran before speaking with a bitter smile. However, you really don't have to worry about us, sisters, because we understand our own situation better than you do. The meridians in her body were all broken. Her dantian was completely destroyed. Her sea of consciousness was on the verge of collapse, and her ancestral bloodline had been forcefully extracted. Even if a core god expert were to appear, they would probably be helpless in the face of such terrible physical conditions. Senior Ru-Yun, you and I are old acquaintances. You should know Yuhaoran's character and personality. Since I said that I could let you return to your peak state, then I naturally have a way and means to do so. After smiling and replying to Ru Yun's persuasion, Yuhaoran directly sat down cross-legged and took out the 13 level 2 ninth grade medicinal ingredients that he had just obtained from negotiating with the Snake Beauty. The level 2 first grade 9 Sun Spirit sculpting pill can forcefully reconnect the torn meridians and blood vessels and repair the collapsed dantian and sea of consciousness. While using the method of forming seals with his 10 fingers to condense a completely transparent independent space of the dantian fire, Yuhaoran explained in detail the pill he planned to refine and its effects. A pill that could reconnect the blood vessels and meridians and repair the dantian and sea of consciousness. Hearing Yuhaoran's introduction, Ru Yun's expression was slightly shocked. Ru Yin suddenly raised her head and looked at him with an incredulous look in her eyes. Seniors, I only occasionally heard about your encounters during this period of time, but I don't know much about the specific process. The refining process of the level 2 first grade 9 Sun Spirit sculpting pill was not very complicated. With his current alchemy cultivation at the peak of the Alchemy Emperor realm, he could easily refine it even with his eyes closed. Therefore, while refining the medicinal ingredients for refining pills, Yuhaoran also wanted to know why the sisters Ru Yin and Ru Yun wanted to kill the only son of the patriarch, the only heir of the Snake Beauty tribe, causing them to suffer such a disaster. Chapter 17:24. Yuhaoran couldn't help but sigh after listening to Ru Yin's narration of the entire process of the sisters' calamity. In fact, the reason for the calamity that the Ru Yin sisters encountered was very cliché. It was nothing more than the young clan leader of the Snake Beauty clan taking a fancy to Ru Yin's devastatingly beautiful appearance, as well as her noble temperament like that of a fairy of the ninth heaven. She wanted to use her as a furnace. However, the arrogant Ru Yin simply looked down on the trash of a young clan leader. Moreover, with her extraordinary talent and strength, she had humiliated the young clan leader more than once. And the result, Ru Yin was deceived into losing her virginity, and Ru Yun was sealed when she shed her mortal body. The mastermind behind the scenes was the young clan leader. Although he had successfully removed Ru Yun's seal on Qingyun Peak at the 100 Qi Gate and helped her recover her strength at the peak of the 9th level Sage Realm, her damaged foundation hadn't recovered. With the recovery of the world's spiritual energy, the heavenly Tao's rules gradually fell into a deep slumber. More and more martial venerables and Emperor Wu experts in hiding appeared. Ru Yin's cultivation and strength couldn't continue to increase, and her situation became more and more difficult. In the end, after a venerable realm ancestor of the direct bloodline appeared, the young clan leader directly chose to use force to forcibly seize Ru Yun. In order to protect her virginity, and also for the trace of unrealistic fantasy in her heart, Ru Yun finally chose to overdraw 90% of her life force. When she killed the venerable realm ancestor, she didn't even let the young clan leader off. Ru Yin, who had a deep sisterly relationship, was naturally the only accomplice. For the Snake Beauty clan who valued the inheritance of pure bloodline, the tragic death of the only young clan leader was equivalent to severing the inheritance of the entire clan, directly destroying the future of the Snake Beauty clan. Therefore, the Snake Beauty clan who had completely fallen into a violent rage would give the Ru Yin sisters inhumane torture. This was also the fundamental reason why the Snake Beauty clan reacted so agitatedly when they heard that he was a friend of the Ru Yin sisters. Fortunately, the support of Ru Yin's hatred and the persistence of Ru Yun's concern allowed them to withstand the pain caused by the torture until Yuhaoran rescued them. Yuhaoran, as long as you can help us sisters recover from our injuries, then we are willing to be your slaves. Furthermore, I can let you experience the unique ventriloquism of the Snake Beauty. I guarantee that you will be unable to extricate yourself from it. The more she talked about the suffering she had suffered, the deeper the resentment in Ru Yin's heart. In order to have the power to take revenge on the entire tribe, she did not hesitate to sell her dignity and soul. No matter how strong Yu Haoran's mental fortitude was, when faced with Ru Yin mentioning the famous ventriloquism of the Tianxian continent, Yu Haoran immediately felt a surge of anger in his abdomen. He could not help but start to fantasize. Sis, there was no problem with the promise of being a slave or a maid, but how could he bring up that kind of special ventriloquism? This caused Ru Yun to blush and remind him. Ru Yun's tender voice reminded Yu Haoran to immediately wake up from his fantasies. He immediately adjusted his overflowing emotions and focused all of his energy on refining the pill. He did not dare to casually communicate with the fiery Ru Yin, nor did he dare to see the sister's cherry-like lips. Otherwise, he suspected that he might have agreed to the promise that Ru Yin mentioned just now. As he focused all of his attention, the speed of refining the pill immediately increased by a lot. Half an hour later, 9 pills emitting a strange fragrance were successfully refined. After putting away 7 of the pills, Yu Haoran used his mind to control the remaining 2 pills. They floated in front of Ru Yin and Ru Yun, and then reminded them with a serious expression. Senior Ru Yin, Senior Ru Yun, although the first rank 9 Sun Spirit sculpting pill of the second rank can allow you to regain the strength of your peak state, it cannot make up for the loss of your ancestral bloodline. After hearing Yu Haoran's reminder, Ru Yun's reaction was very calm. This was because, in her opinion, although the ancestral bloodline could increase the speed of cultivation and increase one's strength, if one truly wanted to climb to the peak of the martial way and walk one's own path of martial way, the ancestral bloodline's inheritance would instead be a kind of shackle. However, Ru Yin, whose state of mind and temperament were far inferior to her sister's, revealed a trace of disappointment in her eyes. Fortunately, Ru Yun's persuasion and the joy of surviving a disaster allowed her to adjust her state of mind in the end. She then used the first rank 9 Sun Spirit sculpting pill of the second rank to recover her strength. Taking advantage of the time that Ru Yin and Ru Yun used the pill to recover their strength, Yu Haoran closed his eyes and began to use the blood essence refined from Thaling to accelerate the transformation of the law of life and death. At the same time, he continued to comprehend the true essence of life and the mysteries of death. Ru Yin, who was the most talented and had a better state of mind, was the first to use the first rank 9 Sun Spirit sculpting pill of the second rank to recover from her injuries. However, the moment her injuries and cultivation were completely healed, a terrifying energy suddenly erupted from her blood, meridians, body, dantian, and sea of consciousness. She didn't need to control it at all and directly broke through the bottleneck of the realm, her cultivation directly breaking through to the venerable realm. Ru Yin, who recovered from her injuries, also erupted with a terrifying energy that allowed her cultivation to smoothly advance to the venerable realm. The powerful aura formed by the breakthrough of the venerable realm made Yu Haoran unable to calm down and continue to comprehend the true essence and mysteries of the realm. In helplessness, he could only temporarily stop his cultivation and quietly observe the situation of Ru Yin and Ru Yin's breakthrough. Whether it was in terms of talent, temperament, or personal comprehension and accumulation, Ru Yun was far superior to Ru Yin. When Ru Yun relied on the terrifying energy that erupted from her body to assist her cultivation to break through to the peak of the 6th grade of the Venerable Realm, Ru Yin barely advanced to the peak of the 2nd grade of the Venerable Realm. At the same time, from the extent of the increase in her aura, she had at most broken through to the early stage of the 3rd grade of the Venerable Realm. The final result was just as he had guessed. After Ru Yin broke through to the early stage of the 3rd grade of the Venerable Realm, the energy that erupted from her body was completely exhausted. However, even though her cultivation breakthrough was far inferior to Ru Yun's, Ru Yin wasn't jealous at all. This was because other than Ru Yun, who was her sister, she couldn't imagine that Ru Yin could advance to the early stage of the 3rd grade of the Venerable Realm in such a short period of time. All of this was brought to her by this handsome young man in front of her. When she thought of this, Ru Yin didn't have any thoughts to consolidate her breakthrough. She looked at Yu Haoran with a trace of confusion in her eyes, and at the same time, she stuck out her tongue that was slightly softer and longer than a normal person's. Yu Haoran, who had finally dispelled the distracting thoughts in his heart, saw Ru Yin's charming appearance at this moment, and the anger in his abdomen immediately began to rise. Chapter 1725. Ru Yun's powerful aura when he advanced to the early 7th level of the Exalted Realm, and his decisive shout woke Ru Yin from her dazed state, allowing Yu Haoran to successfully suppress the distracting thoughts in his heart. Whether it was the woman with the enchantment bloodline or Ru Yin's bewilderment just now, he was unable to control the emergence of distracting thoughts. This made him gradually realize that there must be a problem with his recent cultivation. Otherwise, with his powerful state of mind and the experience of living 2 lives, he should not have been so easily distracted in the face of temptation. While Ru Yin and Ru Yun were consolidating their cultivation, Yu Haoran checked his condition and discussed with Thaling in his sea of consciousness. Yu Haoran, don't worry. There are no hidden dangers in your cultivation so far. Thaling thought for a moment and comforted him with a smile after hearing Yu Haoran's worries and troubles. Thaling, why was I able to face Ru Yin's charm calmly in the past? But why was I so distracted in the face of her temptation now? Thaling's words of comfort did not dispel Yu Haoran's doubts at all. Yu Haoran, the reason why you were unable to resist the temptation of the women of the succubi and Ru's marriage is not because your willpower is lacking, nor is there a problem with your cultivation. It's because of the special charm they possess. To all living beings with flesh and blood, they possess an irresistible temptation. Really? Yu Haoran still questioned in disbelief. Yu Haoran, if you don't believe me, you can ask Palace now. Ask him about his thoughts when he faced Ru Yin and Ru Yin, Thaling suggested with a smile, ignoring Yu Haoran's doubts. Brother Qi, did you have any special thoughts when you faced Ru Yin and Ru Yun? Although it was a little rude to ask Palace this question directly, he could only force himself to ask in order to eliminate the troubles in his heart and not affect his future cultivation and breakthroughs. Brother Yu, do you know why I was avoiding the mermaid named Qing Ro? Do you know why I stayed away from the sisters? In the face of Yu Haoran's questioning, Palace did not directly answer, but he confirmed Thaling's explanation through 2 rhetorical questions, which made him feel relieved. Ru Yin, who had advanced to the early stage of the 7th level, had the ability to protect herself. Yu Haoran thought of the temptation Ru Yin emitted when she fell into confusion, the possible crisis Fengrun City might encounter. Qin Lingfei and the sword without trace in Xianyang City's Prince Mansion, and the time when the tomb of the great god Jin Yuan was opening was getting closer. Yu Haoran thought of leaving immediately. From Victor's and his own storage rings, he selected 10 spiritual veins, several magic tools at the peak of the Exalt realm, several top-notch escape talismans, and a dozen or so healing pills. After placing them in an empty storage ring, he quietly placed them on a blue stone in front of Ru Yun. Afterwards, he used his spiritual sense to inform Palace, then soared into the sky and left the mountain, heading straight for Fengrun City thousands of miles away. Half an hour later, Ru Yun, who had consolidated her breakthrough, slowly opened her eyes. Her eyes were filled with endless joy as she looked for the person who had given her a new life and made her miss him day and night. However, when she saw the empty mountain peak and the storage ring on the blue stone in front of her, the joy in her eyes was instantly replaced by disappointment. She reached out her hand towards the storage ring on the blue stone, and the storage ring slowly fell into her hand. She then entered the space within the storage ring with her spiritual sense. After seeing the 10 spiritual veins of the 5th and 6th level, several top-notch Exalt realm magic tools, several top-notch escape talismans, and a dozen or so different types of pills in the storage ring, Ru Yun's heart was filled with warmth, and she finally made a bold decision. Since he knew the exact coordinates of Fengrun City, Yu Haoran directly used the method of tearing the void 100 miles away from the mountain peak, where Ru Yun and Ru Yun were at. He successfully returned to Fengrun City the moment Ru Yun finished consolidating her cultivation. "Master, you're back." Seeing Yu Haoran suddenly appear in the city lord's courtyard, Xiang Muling, who was barbecuing a first-grade 8th-level thornbird in the courtyard, immediately threw away the food in her hand and happily rushed to his side. "I'm hungry again." Looking at the 2-meter-tall thornbird and the 3-meter-tall redwood boar beside the fire, Yu Haoran's eyes were filled with a trace of doting. 7 days ago, after successfully quelling and pacifying the internal strife in Fengrun City, he was in a dilemma as to what to do with Xiang Muling, who refused to leave him no matter what. This was because no matter if it was using the yin-yang fire to refine the energy within the black and white wings, discussing the future cultivation plans with Thaling, or arranging the methods to deal with the Great Han Empire's revenge, they all required an absolutely secluded and quiet space. At the same time, with Xiang Muling's miserable life experience, he couldn't bear to scold her harshly. He was even more unwilling to see the sadness on her face when she was chased away. In the end, under Thaling's suggestion, Yu Haoran could only make an exception and take her as his disciple. He also planned to arrange for her to be taken care of by Qin Lingfei and the sword without trace when he returned to Xianying City. And, seeing that her master had already noticed the 2 exotic beasts she secretly killed, Xiang Muling was like a child who was caught doing something wrong by an adult. She lowered her head and admitted it embarrassedly. "Silly girl, didn't I already tell you that no matter what you want to eat and when you want to eat, you can arrange for the servants to prepare it for you?" Originally, he wanted to reach out and stroke Xiang Muling's head, but he saw that even if he raised his hand, he could barely touch her ear. In the end, he could only lightly pat her arm and remind her, "Master, I don't want to trouble others." There was a hint of dissatisfaction in his reminder. Xiang Muling was afraid that her master would get angry and leave her, so she hurriedly explained. Knowing what happened to Xiang Muling in the past, Yu Haoran didn't want to trouble others, so he didn't say anything more. Looking at the thorn bird that was almost done roasting and the redwood boar that hadn't been processed yet, Yu Haoran thought about Xiang Muling's special physique and the need for food. After replacing his helpless expression with a smile, Yu Haoran gently reminded her, "Muling, I have some things to discuss with General An and the others. Continue to enjoy your delicacies, but don't forget to cultivate properly after you're full." "Yes, Master." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.